Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto returns stronger than Jiraiya chunin exams. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by the Omnipresent Sage and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Hokage Office. Tsunade smiled happily as Jiraiya announced his return to Konoha by bursting through the window of her office. She allowed the fact that she had been taking an unplanned nap to slip by as she was finally able to see her former teammate after 3 long years. Since disappearing with Naruto for the training trip, the man never set foot in the village and his messages were a few. She only got a letter after 6 months, and it really contained nothing but that they were still alive. It is okay to say you miss me, Haim. I can see it in your face that you're all excited, Jiraiya said with a grin. No one is watching and I will keep it just between us. Tsunade couldn't help but smile. Man, she had missed her former teammate. The Godame Hokage shook her head before responding with a mask on her face. As if I would miss a pervert like you. You're brutal, Haim, Jiraiya said with a hurt look on his face. And I thought of running back to you with sake from the land of toads just so we could talk about old days and of course how much you have missed me. You brought sake from the land of toads? Tsunade nearly jumped out of her chair at the thought. She had never tasted anything better than the sake from that land. There was nothing that rivaled it. Kumo had some great imports, but they still could not just reach the taste of the sake from the land of the toads. It was something special. Yeah, Jiraiya said with a wide grin. It was given to Naruto, but he didn't take much of it so I took it all for myself. We can drink it later. Why later? Tsunade asked. She was ready now. She only stopped of demanding that the sage lead her somewhere they could drink in peace when she thought of that loudmouth brat. Where is he anyway? I thought he'd be with you. The mood changed slightly. He said he would join me, but he is in the village. I guess he is at the ramen stand, said he had missed it dearly more than anything, the toad sage said with a shake of his head. Haim, the man said in a serious tone. Naruto isn't the same anymore. Judging by the tone, she could guess as much, but what? He hadn't looked like someone who was capable of making a change that would get Jiraiya all that serious. He still had to be the Naruto she knew and loved, right? Tsunade shook her head. It was just a feeling, but she was sure that there was nothing really that could make her worry. Don't scare me like that, Jiraiya, Tsunade said even though the man had yet to say anything. It was just that the tone of his voice was something that made one fear for the worst, even if it was Uzumaki Naruto they were talking about. A year and a half ago, I thought it was best to teach Naruto how to use the Kyuubi's chakra with the Akatsuki in mind, Jiraiya started as he took off his upper clothes, revealing a nasty wound on his chest. I assumed that it took deep emotions for Naruto to tap into that power so I loosened the seal and got him mad. This is what happened. I nearly died, Haim. It is some miracle that I survived, but it took me about 5 weeks to recover since we had no trusted medic to do the critical work. Naruto said he was conscious when it all happened. He saw himself pummeling me down to death. If it wasn't because I managed to suppress the chakra, he would have ripped me apart. He blamed himself for it. Even though I tried to talk him out of it, he didn't listen. But it didn't bring him down, it seemed to make him a lot more determined to control the power and dedicated to becoming powerful, or so I thought. Tsunade frowned. How bad could it be? Naruto didn't have a lot of people around him when he grew up, Haim. It might not be for a long time, but we have grown close and I know he sees me as family, and he nearly killed that family he has. I guess I'm to blame because I'd taken on myself to teach him about life and everything else. Aside from that, these 3 years were not a waste. He can't have changed that much just because of that, Jiraiya, Tsunade said in a firm tone. She didn't want to believe what her former teammate was telling her. This was Uzumaki Naruto they were talking about. His friend had stabbed him in the chest, and yet he still didn't resent him. If that wasn't enough to change him, then what could have? You must be thinking that this is Naruto, the naive loud-mouthed brat you once knew, the toad sage said, but it is exactly that Naruto that you must be worried. Take the abuse he has suffered in the hands of the villagers, being lonely, being nearly killed by his best friend and someone he saw as a brother. And then he came close to killing me. We must be the ones naive to think that even after all the experiences Naruto has had he could not change. Tsunade retreated to her thoughts. Certainly, any normal person would not be the same after all the experiences. The core of their being might not change, but there would still be something different about them. It would be a lie to say that the amount of experiences either her or Jiraiya have accumulated have not influenced them. Wasn't she the one who fled this village and went on a gambling spree because of her pain? Naruto had also suffered, but after everything, he was still there, smiling as always. She had returned to this village because of him. To think that person would be no more scared her. Before the Godame Hokage could offer a response to Jiraiya, there was a knock on the door. Come in, Tsunade said. Naruto entered. Even though Jiraiya said he changed, seeing the orange in him made Tsunade forget about everything. She was just happy that he was there, before her, still alive and well. That was all she could ask for at this moment. Since when did you learn to knock? Naruto smiled. Well, I just thought I'd surprise you, Bachan. You always complained about just bursting through the door, and if Jiraiya-sensei wasn't here, you were likely going to be napping, the blonde said calmly. Tsunade heard him call her Bachan, but she didn't miss the fact that he called Jiraiya with respect. It wasn't anything the man deserved. The blonde Hokage studied the blonde for a few moments. He was just standing in front of her desk, smiling, blue eyes staring back into hers, nothing hidden in them, but nothing visible. The woman shook her head. She had actually been napping when Jiraiya got here. It is good to see you again though, the Godame said with a large smile. You have certainly grown well. I guess you made up for the growth you missed in your younger days. Naruto smiled. Yes, those bitter days ramen was the only affordable food, the only food he could eat. The cold-hearted villagers could not allow him to eat anything else. It wasn't to say that ramen was food for pigs or demons as they despicably called him. Ramen was good, deliciously good. But he had come to understand that it wasn't healthy eating just ramen only. There needed to be a mixture of other foods that had other nutrients. Back then, he had just been happy with getting his gut filled up. There were no complaints. As long as he enjoyed his ramen and he slept with a full stomach, he could still smile and pretend as if everything was all right. It was much better than the crappy food and sometimes cold water as supper in the torment hell known was the orphanage. If he had been allowed to buy other food, how would he have managed it? The Sandaime didn't give him enough allowance to be carefree with what he bought. He could only afford so much. But considering what he held inside of him, the old man could have been a little generous with what he gave him. The pervert by the window. Hey, Jiraiya interrupted Naruto before he could finish speaking. I was feeling happy when you actually called me Jiraiya-sensei. Naruto just continued as if he hadn't heard the man but had merely taken a pause to gather his breath. Thought it would be better if we ate all types of food with the needed nutrients. I was busy training, so my body had to be healthy to be able to keep up with everything that I was learning. More strain to the body requires more energy to be burned. We consider chakra to be essential, but chakra doesn't keep the joints, muscles healthy. Tsunade blinked and stared at Naruto as if he had grown a second head. She was dreaming, right? Naruto couldn't speak like that. He was a carefree person who hated studying, a naive idiot who was as stupid as one could be. The Godame looked at Jiraiya. What did you do, pervert? I just trained him, Jiraiya said. Naruto ignored most of his studies when at the academy. There was a lot that he didn't know, and with the use of clones, it would have been a waste and a deliberate attempt from my part to stop him from growing. I got all the materials that Naruto needed to learn, and told him the secret of shadow clones that he had been too stupid to figure out even though he used them every day. The Sannin took a shot at Naruto. I take offense in that, sensei, Naruto said with a look on his face. Well, I have to admit, it is remarkable that I was never able to notice that I received the memories of my clones each time I used them. Then again, I still say that it was because I always summoned hundreds at a time that I was never able to notice. Lame excuse, Jiraiya snorted. When practicing your Rasengan, you were not using hundreds. You mean the Rasengan I mastered far faster than you did? Naruto asked with an all-too-nice smile. Should I go on about Senjutsu as well? Hold on a moment, Tsunade stopped the couple's quarrel. What about Senjutsu? The toads taught it to him, Jiraiya said, his lips frowning by the second. And he managed to master it unlike me. Tsunade looked at Naruto, who had a foxy smile on his face, eyes closed, and then at Jiraiya, who was frowning. The two had certainly developed a good relationship. What is it that you taught him that I should know? She thought it was too soon for Naruto to be taught something like that though, but she wasn't going to raise that now with Naruto still in the room. She was going to wait until he leaves and then glare at Jiraiya. Nothing much, Jiraiya said with knowing grin and a careless shrug of his shoulders. I took things seriously. We were not going out there to have fun. We did have lots of fun though, didn't we? Naruto nodded. Yes, we did. It wouldn't be so bad if we go out again, sensei. But this time, you will be paying for everything, as you will be paying my rent until I get to do missions. Hey, why do I have to pay for your rent? Because, Ero-sennin, Naruto said in a deliberately slow tone. You took all my life savings and spent it all on women and alcohol. Jiraiya! Tsunade shouted. The Sannin raised his hands defensively. He had no use for it at that time. I was paying for our meals and motels, his clothes and weaponry. Naruto scoffed. Since when did we start calling a self-made tent under a tree a motel? I didn't even know we were paying for the food we hunted ourselves. As far as I remember, I bought my clothes and weapons I was using by doing some odd jobs in the villages we visited while you went drinking, and I had to play that fun game of trying to locate a perverted old geezer in a sea of perverted old geezers. Jiraiya, Tsunade said in a hardened tone. You and I need to talk about your parenting skills. There was a threat in those words. It was not spoken, but Jiraiya's sweating said it all. Naruto laughed, seeing how scared Jiraiya seemed. Don't beat up the old man, Bachan. You might end finishing him off. He received a lot of beatings from angry women during our time. Sometimes I almost pitied him, but it was just fun watching him crawl and beg unforgiving women who feel wronged, Naruto said with a smile. Besides that, I enjoyed myself and was happy. Camping out at night while we talked, creating traps for animals, and sometimes getting caught in our own traps. It was fun, much fun than I had in my life. Those memories, I will forever cherish. I don't think hanging upside down a tree with the wooden spikes glaring at you is any fun. It wasn't, especially when you were the one hanging, instead of an animal. Worse, when your so-called hunting partner didn't come out to help you out when you called for help. Serves you right, Tsunade said to Jiraiya before turning to Naruto. I'm glad that you managed to have fun, though. A warm smile graced her lips as she spoke. Everything seems to be in order, Naruto said. If there is nothing more, I will take my leave. Bachan. He did a mocking bow and before disappearing in small gusts of winds. What is it that you did to him, Jiraiya? Tsunade asked once Naruto left. Her tone was hardened. He doesn't look as innocent as he had been before he left the village. Back then, he was someone who could still say he would bring back Sasuke to the village even though the Uchiha nearly killed him. Would have, had it not been for the Kyuubi. Jiraiya was silent for a few moments. He would not have taken things far if the situation didn't require it, but because this was Naruto, he had to give it his all. He could not go any other way with Naruto's training, and it worked because Naruto was willing to admit that he was weak and needed to become stronger. He wasn't always going to be there for him. It was a reality that they had to face and accept. He didn't want to give Naruto false hope. It would be a blatant lie to say he would always be there for him for protection. He could not. He was just a mere mortal with limits. The least he could do was to give Naruto the tools he needed to protect himself. This was the unpredictable world of shinobi. There was hope, but he could not say he would be alive to be there tomorrow. Hope was fundamental to all humans. Without it, they would live a lost life. But just because it was fundamental didn't mean that it was all right to give people false hope. What would happen if he promised to be there always and could not make it? Naruto has been through a lot. I learned about his life in the orphanage, being forced to live on his own at a tender age. He had to worry about what he was going to eat every night, while other children go home every day, knowing that their parents have prepared something. Naruto did not have that. As much as I tried to get him to experience everything about life, I didn't take away his independence. I wanted him to continue standing on his own, but with the knowledge that if he was falling, he had friends who could pick him up. My experiences, knowledge, I shared with him. Everything I know about this world, and my wishes, I shared with him because I wanted him to open his eyes and understand the world he was living in. Keeping him ignorant would not have done any good. I taught him what was necessary, not only for his own survival, but for his happiness as well. But teaching him senjutsu, isn't that taking it too far? Naruto is still just a brat, Jiraiya. A brat who has been living on his own since he was 6 years old. You don't know what that feels like. He didn't have anyone, no one. Not a single friend, no parents, just alone in a rundown apartment, and surrounded by people who would celebrate his death. Jiraiya shouted a bit angrily. Naruto suffered. I don't want him to suffer anymore. Besides, since when do I teach senjutsu? You know that I can't do that. The Toads make that decision. If they felt he was ready, then he was ready. I have no say in it, and truthfully, I wasn't complaining when they took him away. Senjutsu will protect Naruto against the Akatsuki. They are not going to wait until he grows up before trying to take him. They have already tried that, and it was only because I was there to stop them that they failed. Will you, be there the next time they appear? When was the last time? Jiraiya shouted at her angrily. He almost never did. Never. But he was shouting, glaring at her, daring her to come up with a rational retort to his reasons. Tsunade could not find any. The only word that came to mind is a but nothing less, nothing more. The fact that she could not find a flaw in his reasons silenced her. Sorry, I shouted, Jiraiya said with an awkward smile. I may be a little mad at myself for allowing him to suffer alone. My parenting skills are bad, but at least, he would not have suffered alone if I had taken him. I can't change what happened, but I can at least make sure that his future isn't one that is filled with regrets and pain. You should be, Tsunade said in a quiet tone. But maybe I should be the one who is apologizing. I never realized that Naruto grew long ago. Perhaps it was innocence and naivety that made me think that. The blonde Hokage shook her head. This talk has made me slightly sad just thinking about it. It makes what Sasuke did even unforgivable. Tsunade looked up at Jiraiya as she stood up. What do you say for a drink? In about an hour or so, Jiraiya said. Tsunade blinked. That has never happened, never ever. When she said a drink, Jiraiya always jumped. The Godame Hokage was so surprised that she sat down just to think it over. Jiraiya grinned. Just kidding, he said. Tsunade glared. Never mind. I have a lot of work to do, and with Naruto back, I'm sure my workload is just going to increase, the blonde said. Oh, come on, Haim, Jiraiya begged. Tsunade smiled. Yes, she preferred it this way. Not that she just enjoyed seeing Jiraiya begging. It was just something normal. She needed to see the normal so that she could rain down her fears that things were changing. Later that day, Naruto was sitting in the dark, inside his apartment, in the small kitchen. The only thing that was visible were his eyes. It has always been like this. He had friends during day, but at the end of the day, he would be back here and the cold walls would remind him of how lonely he was, how much he needed someone in his life to take that loneliness away. The emptiness, he had forgotten that with Jiraiya by him. There was never a moment that made him feel lonely when the Sannin was with him. Back then, he had always retreated back to this bitter cage of loneliness alone, and just imagine how beautiful others were living with their parents. The voices of parents calling their children to take a bath, brush their teeth before going to bed, they rung inside his head those days as he tried to imagine having his own parents. The imaginations hadn't comforted him, they had must compounded on the misery. The thoughts were beautiful yet bitter. It was nice, but he could not touch it, he could not experience it because he had no parents of his own. Iruka had changed all that, perhaps because he could understand parts of him. The man had become really close to him. Naruto had thought he had grown out of his loneliness, but here he was, alone, just the cold walls glaring at him. There was no one to talk to. He could summon a clone and have a conversation with it, but that would get some people to send him toward a psychological evaluation if it was discovered. There was nothing worse than being suspected of having lost one's mind. The lights suddenly flicked on, but Naruto did not move an inch. Jiraiya walked towards the blonde. He was still able to walk just fine, but he smelled of alcohol. What are you doing in the dark like this? The Sannin demanded. It was the kind of thing that would make people worry. Jiraiya didn't want that, he wanted Naruto to enjoy his life. No one who switched off the lights and just sat down, unblinking, was having good thoughts. It was in the dark, with no one, obviously, there was a war occurring in the head. I was thinking, Naruto responded calmly. About? Jiraiya asked calmly. People have been looking for you ever since it was known that you returned, but no one saw you. It appeared as if you'd vanished into thin air. That kind of thing gets people concerned. I was concerned. Naruto shook his head. I know people were looking for me, he said. I was observing things around the village. I just realized that I had a fragile heart despite having taken in so much that made me appear to have a strong-willed heart. I was afraid allowing my friends to know that I am a Jinchuriki because I thought if they knew, they would leave me alone. Jiraiya didn't sit down, even though this was a serious matter. I would say you were just afraid of losing friends. Naruto nodded. Yes, I was, but as I was thinking today, I thought it doesn't matter anymore. I am the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi and nothing is going to change it. If those I call friends cannot accept it, then so be it. After saying that, there was silence. Wanna go to the hot springs and share a drink? Jiraiya suggested. Naruto thought about it for a moment before nodding. That sounds like a good idea. My body is a little tense with all the thinking. I could use something to refresh my mind. Jiraiya smiled. I have the sake, we need saucers, he said. Naruto pointed at a cupboard and Jiraiya walked up to fetch 2 saucers. It was just the 2 of them, and 2 more glasses. It made the Sannin frown, but when he turned to face Naruto, he was smiling. Nothing further was said as the 2 disappeared and went out to look for a hot spring that didn't have anyone in it. Once they found it, they got in. When was the last time we did this? Jiraiya asked, holding his saucer with Naruto just away on his right side, naked inside the water as he was. I don't remember. Naruto's response was quick to come. Let me gauge your memory a bit, Jiraiya said with a grin. You were crying after losing your virginity. You were crying as if you'd been raped and saying something like you wanted to do it first with your beloved. Sakura-chan the Toad Sage laughed at the memory. I thought we discussed that we were not going to talk about it again, Naruto said, not the least amused. Jiraiya shrugged. I don't remember that agreement, he said. That woman did rape me though. I was tied on a bed, with chakra seals. How is that not rape? Naruto asked. Some women just like it that way. Sometimes I do too, the Sannin admitted without any shame. You didn't have to cry about it though. Those tears were for your amusement, Erosenin, Naruto said firmly. It does make me feel almost touched that you would leave your beloved Tsunade and come to me. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes, and took a sip of his sake. What is that supposed to mean? Naruto smiled. You think I don't know that you're in love with the old hag? Give me some credit, sensei. I should know, I have also been a victim of unrequited love. Jiraiya sighed. I forgot about her, he said of Sakura. What are you going to do about her? No offense, but I don't want to end up like you, sensei. You have always been a pervert, but the thing with her makes it worse. You know she will never love you, yet you still hopelessly love her. I have gone through enough pain to cling on to something like that. My own happiness should matter as well, even though I used to say seeing her smile makes it all right, but my happiness should matter as well. Jiraiya smiled. You're speaking like a grown-up now, the man said. I wish for you to be happy as well. Then who are you going to go after? Or are you just going to experiment until you find the right one? Naruto snorted. I'm not a pervert like you, sensei. Says the brat who uses a perverted jutsu and actually wrote the last issue of Ika Ika Paradise, the Sannin said. He was still a little bitter about that. How could Naruto, who has never written anything, write his book under his name and send it to his publisher? Worse, the publisher liked it and published it. That was because we needed money and you could not find any inspiration to write anything besides. I created that jutsu to beat up perverted people like you. It works, Jiraiya said. Speaking of which, can you create one for me harem style? Ever since you saw a naked woman, it has really been appealing and provocative. Just sitting here without women is making the water cold. You do know that inside it is a man. It doesn't look a man to me, Jiraiya said firmly. Now, are you going to do it? The man was already grinning madly. Naruto shook his head. I'm not going to stay behind and watch it, it will be just too disgusting. You're still going to get the memories. Naruto shook his head. I will create a clone that won't give me memories, and you know what? If you touch them, they might go boom in lightning. With all the water here and an intoxicated body, I'm sure it will be quite a shock. Jiraiya didn't think about that pain. Naruto had done it before. If he touched the clones, they would shock him. It wasn't fun as it left him paralyzed, but he was not going to stop because of that. The following day, Tsunade sighed loudly when Danzo entered her office with one of his lackeys in the name of Koharu. It was still early in the morning and she was still nursing a headache. She really didn't need anything or anyone compounding to her pain. She didn't enjoy it that much. What do you want? The Godame Hokage asked impatiently. She was sure it had something to do with Naruto, but she wasn't going to entertain anything that she did not agree with. Just as the Sandaime had refused to allow Danzo to touch Naruto, she would not allow it, and she would not do it in a nice way as her sensei did. She would be willing to even pummel the old man to the ground if he tried something behind her back. She wasn't forgiving as her sensei had been. It is about the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. We know that he has returned to the village, but we do not know if he has received enough training, but that isn't why we are here anyway, Danzo said. Team 7 is missing a member since you allowed Sasuke to leave the village. Allowed? Tsunade asked, not the least amused by the accusation. I remember sending a team to go after him. It did end up in failure, but it wasn't because for the lack of trying. A couple of genin and a newly promoted chunin, is that what you call a team? Danzo asked. For a mission of that scale, you should have sent at least Anbu to go after him, but you chose to send children. I wasn't surprised when they failed and our Jinchuriki was almost killed in the process. Tsunade glared. If it had been up to you, things would have gone better, right? The Godame asked sarcastically. Without question, Danzo said, even though he knew the woman was being sarcastic in her question. I have not come here to fight. I want to make a proposal. What? Team 7 currently lacks a fourth member. I am willing to give you one of my own. He is around the age and will fit in well. Sasuke is no longer here, and as we increase our efforts to track him down, Team 7 will need a new member. You just want to spy on Naruto closely, Tsunade said in a flat tone. But I will not deny that there isn't anyone who can fit into that team now. Fine, your request has been granted. If there is nothing else, get out of my office. I'd like to rest a little more before doing some work. Both Koharu and Danzo left without another word. Once they were gone, Jiraiya made his appearance, spotting some bandages. What the hell happened to you? Long story, Jiraiya said with a smile. We didn't talk about Sasuke yesterday. Tsunade nodded. Where does Naruto stand about it? Truthfully, Jiraiya started. I do not know anymore. We have never talked about it with him. We last spoke about it while he was still in the hospital. After we left, we never spoke about it, and he never once asked about the Uchiha's whereabouts, not even once. Tsunade frowned. I don't think that is bad, but it still feels somehow considering how he was when he left the village, the woman said. Jiraiya nodded in agreement. Don't think too much over it. It won't make any difference. If Sakura or Kakashi asks, Sasuke is still with Orochimaru. He has been moving around with Orochimaru in different places. But I don't know where they are. Whenever news reaches me, they are already at a different place. Keeping track of our former teammate is still hard as it was. Well, he was always slippery, Tsunade said. Are you leaving? Jiraiya nodded. I need to find some information about the Akatsuki. There is a lead I got. I want to check it out, but I won't be gone for too long. Just be careful out there, Tsunade said. Jiraiya grinned. Worried about poor old me, Haim? He said. You don't have to. I am Jiraiya, the legendary Toad Sage. I can take care of myself. Training Ground 7. Naruto looked around the familiar training ground. An air of nostalgia washed over him as he looked up into the sky. There were many memories that were made here, a lot of good times and the bad friendship he thought he had created. At this moment, Naruto didn't know if it had amounted to something. He had been nearly killed, but that was a thing of yesterday. He was over it, but he was not going to allow it to happen again. Sasuke was okay with him being weak and he being stronger. When he got stronger, the Uchiha became jealous of him. A petty emotion that kills weak-minded people who just cannot accept that someone is better than them at something. A superiority complex? But what was it? Just an empty pride. Naruto did not have the time to obsess over someone because they have gotten better at something. If they had worked hard for it, then it was something that needed to be praised. Hard work did pay, it wasn't something that needed to be resented. Petty people went that far because of their own weakness. Naruto, Sakura called, smiling, a beautiful smile. Naruto turned to face the Pinkette. He had seen her yesterday, but he had not said any word to her or to anyone he saw. Looking at her so up close, he could see that she had grown. He amused himself at the thought that Ino would now have more reasons to make fun of her front view. Still, she was still the Sakura he had been madly in love with. She had rejected him so many times, in so many painful ways. He had been annoying, and someone or something a person wouldn't want to go out with. Yes, she had said it all, and yet, he never resented one bit. He continued to love. Ah, how naive young love was. Sakura, Naruto responded with a smile of his own. It has been long, hasn't it? Sakura blinked. There was no Sakura-chan in a loud tone, it was a calm tone and a charming smile that greeted her. Yes, she had said it, Naruto's smile was charming. She would not say it aloud to him, but that was she thought. It has, she said. You never wrote. Naruto smiled. I didn't have your address, he said jokingly. You have grown beautifully well, though. The past years have sure been treating you well. Sakura seemed to beam at that. Well, I have been taking care of myself and I was training harder than before. If we are going to bring Sasuke-kun back, I also need to do my fair share. As a member of Team 7 I must also do my part. Training harder than before? That statement made Naruto raise an eyebrow. It was just ridiculous. The girl had not been training, what she did was put up makeup in order to look good for Sasuke. Even when they were going out on missions, she was most concerned about how she looked. Ah, he missed those bitter days. Since Naruto was a nice person, he didn't say any of his thoughts aloud, he just smiled. That's as good to hear, Sakura, he said happily. Sakura trailed off as she twisted around, sensing something. There was a black and white lion jumping down on them. She didn't waste them before slamming it into drops of black ink with just one punch. Naruto narrowed his eyes behind him for a second as a pale-skinned male flashed behind, a kodachi at him, poised to stab on the back. It wasn't that he couldn't have dodged it. Doing so was just pointless since he had already discovered the teenager had been here before he came. The blonde turned his attention back to Sakura. That is just scary, he said. It reminds me of that woman sitting in the Hokage's office. Sakura smiled, her right fist held up firmly. Well, that woman is my master. She was the one who was teaching me while you were away. Naruto smiled. Well, she just got scary. The Pinkette used to get angry back then, but now Naruto would not want to get her mad. He didn't want to have a repeat of Jiraiya and Tsunade's relationship. It was fine with just those two, the sickness did not have to pass on them as if it was genetic. Well, you were right to say you have been training hard, Naruto said, continuing with his efforts to ignore Sai. I'm guessing you didn't just learn her monstrous punches. You were always smart, excellent chakra control, medical ninjutsu? Sakura nodded. You're looking at the third best medic nin in Konoha, and soon I will surpass Shizen, the Pinkette said a bit proudly. It was something to praise, considering that a few years ago, she was nothing more than a fangirl who couldn't do a good fight. The thought just reminded him of her pathetic attempt of a fight with another fangirl in the name of Eino Yamanaka. Are you really ignoring me, head? Sai asked with a creepy smile on his face. Sakura hadn't really given the pale teen a look because she had been busy with Naruto. He was different, spoke in a quiet and smooth tone that made you just want to listen to it. If he had grown like this, then her beloved Sasuke must have grown splendidly well as well. Who is he, Naruto? Sakura asked, becoming defensive. Is he the one who attacked us earlier? She asked. Naruto nodded. Yes, he is, but he doesn't appear to be looking for much trouble that warrants action. Sai didn't show it, but he was slightly surprised. This Naruto was actually different from the one he had in mind. This wasn't what his intel suggested. He thought that picking up a fight him would be easy, but even when he made a move, the blonde didn't react to it, just because he could sense that he wasn't here for his life. The root spy had no delusions. He knew that Naruto had sensed him when he appeared. He just didn't do anything, not because he could not, but because he felt there was no action that needed to be taken. How could he tell though? The Naruto he was supposed to meet was supposed to be a naive and stupid brat, not this calm person. Kakashi appeared in a puff of smoke, the iconic eye smile in place, a laid-back body language, his beloved book on his left hand, his right inside his pocket. The moment the eye smile went away, it was replaced by a slight look of boredom. That is Sai, he will be your new teammate, Kakashi said a bit lazily. What? Sakura seemed incensed by the thought. Kakashi was a lot more interested in Naruto's reaction, lack of rather. The blonde didn't say a word, he didn't blink. Sighing, the Jonin looked at the irate teenage girl and responded. Team 7 is one member short, and for it to be active you need to have another team member, otherwise, there is no team if you don't want it, you can talk to the Hokage and the team can be dissolved. I don't want the team to be dissolved, Sakura said in a barely audible tone. This was like her second family, she was only missing Sasuke. Even though she liked the Uchiha more, Naruto and Kakashi were still important to her. At the same time, I don't want anyone taking Sasuke's place. Sasuke ran from this village. If he left, it is only logical that he be replaced, Sai said in an emotionless tone. Sakura glared. Any more word from the pale black-haired teen and she was going to snap. There was no one who could replace Sasuke, no one. He would always have a place in their team, in her heart, in Konoha. They would bring him back to Konoha and things would go back to normal once again. What do you think, Naruto? I have no problem, Naruto said. Besides, if the Hokage approved it, there is nothing that can be done, unless you want to go make a fuss in the office. But if there is hope of Sasuke returning, then a space for him must be left open. The words were worded carefully. Sakura nodded firmly. Get that? She said with a look to Sai. You're only warming up Sasuke's seat. Kakashi sighed. Well, I only called you to show you your new teammate. We will start training tomorrow. The man appeared to think for a few moments. Let us say around 8:30 for now. You can just get to know each other or not. The Jonin didn't look really interested in anything. He appeared to be saying it just for the sake of it. Naruto shook his head. Well, this was Hitaki Kakashi, what else should he expect? Oh, one more thing, Kakashi said after something apparently hit him. Yamato, you can come out now, the Jonin called. A man appeared in a flash beside Kakashi. This is Captain Yamato, he will also assist and at times may act as team leader when I am not available. I guess that is enough with introductions, we talk tomorrow during training. Oh, Naruto, can I talk to you? I wanted to talk to him, Sensei, Sakura said before sighing. We were actually planning a reunion yesterday but you kind of went off the grid. We will do it again, tonight, 8 p.m, don't be late, and don't think of not coming. I will come and drag you myself, the Pinkette warned. You can join us if you like, she said to Sai. She sounded as if she was just being polite. Naruto merely shook his head. Before turning to Kakashi, Yamato was once again gone. They were masters of this kind of a game. Sometimes he wished he could be just as cool, but he wasn't that silent. The wind didn't move in silence, unless it was gentle breeze. Unfortunately, he was anything but that. You haven't changed a bit, Naruto said to Kakashi as the two slowly walked back towards the village. You have changed in many more ways than one, the Jonin said. Your clothes have not, though. Well, expecting that part of you to change would be expecting miracles, and such things do not really happen in the shinobi world. Naruto laughed. Don't be like that, Kakashi-sensei, the blonde said. Miracles do happen, but this thing kind of holds some sentimental value for me. Something big will have to happen for me to drop it. It is just like my apartment, I don't plan on changing it because of the sentimental value it holds. Well, now I can't do anything because I'm actually broke. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Since when did you start holding things like that? Since I heard Jiraiya-sensei use the word, Naruto said with a smile. When you spend your time listening to a man, you slowly start to pick up some things about him because the reality is that what he says influences you in many ways. Kakashi looked thoughtful as he tried to imagine Jiraiya speaking wisdom to Naruto. It was even difficult to comprehend that Naruto was the kind of person who would listen to someone talk. Well, things do change, and there was enough that has happened in Naruto's life that shouldn't surprise people if he changed. It was like if he snapped, most people would not be shocked, but would actually ask. He finally snapped. Yamato, Naruto started. From the information Jiraiya gave me, he is a former root operative and a Mokuton user, the blonde said. It was interesting that Jiraiya would tell something like that. It wasn't really a secret, but he just didn't think that Sanin would tell it to Naruto. But this just meant that the level of trust between the two had grown, and that Jiraiya trusted Naruto to know things that were not known to the public. If that was the case, what more information did Naruto know? The Sanin was a spy master, so he had all kinds of information. Why would Jiraiya tell you something like that? Mokuton was the reason he informed me. He assumed that when I returned to the village, there might be someone put closer to me because I am a Jinchuriki. Well, not because he was a Jinchuriki, but because they wanted to keep the Bijou in check, as if he had already gone out crazy or was manipulating him. Naruto felt insulted by the thought. It was Tsunade who could make the decision, and honestly, he was disappointed. It just meant that the woman didn't trust him with the power. Was he some child that needed to be supervised? This really made him feel as if he was a ticking time bomb that had to be shackled in case it decided to set off. I guess there is no reason in denying anything, Kakashi said calmly. Hokage-sama suggested that he be brought just in case something happens. I guess this is because Jiraiya-sama told her that you have learned to use the Kyuubi's power. Previously, you were only able to use it after experiencing intense emotions. The Jonin took a thoughtful look as a memory flashed. Well, you did use it on your own during the chunin exams. Well, I had to win that battle, Naruto said. Kakashi didn't waste time before changing the subject. I actually wanted to know how you've been doing? We didn't get to talk much after everything and I have kind of missed you after this past years. If I was a little cynical I would have found that to be amusing, Naruto started calmly. You're the guy who hardly taught me anything and worse, got Ebisu to teach me in preparation for the chunin exams. Ebisu of all people, my taijutsu was lacking, there were a lot of flaws in my fighting style, and yet you gave me a babysitter to train me. Kakashi winced at that. Maybe he should have done better knowing that Naruto was going to face someone in all aspects of skills better than Naruto. It had not been skill that won Naruto the fight with Neji, but will and determination. He could not take credit for any of that, he was merely a sensei to Naruto by name. If Kakashi said. He smiled. I guess you don't resent me for it then, he said it in a mildly bitter tone. I'm not into hating people, Naruto responded calmly. That has always been a quality that makes you stand out, Kakashi said. But truly, I did fail you as your sensei. I should have done better considering. The Jonin trailed off, biting his lip. He nearly said something about Naruto's father having taken his time to teach him. Well, everything. He eyed Naruto to see if the blonde had noticed it, but there was nothing in Naruto's expression to suggest he did. Maybe, but while you may not have done much, personally, I learned valuable lessons about life from you. There are things that I cannot forget. The memories with Team 7, everything was okay because you were our sensei, Naruto said in a calm tone. You have certainly grown, Kakashi said a bit proudly. So, how was your trip with Jiraiya-sama? I'm sure he took you through a lot of things, the man added with a slight perverted smile. Kakashi was certain of it. The Sannin wasn't the greatest model, and if he was willing to get off with Naruto's sexy jutsu then he could certainly get far. It was what you call a roller coaster, had its highs and lows, but through everything, I learned a lot of things about life, this world, shinobi, jutsu, so many things. It was fun, Naruto said without going into detail. Kakashi fell short of saying that he was expecting something a little naughty, but it was fine. Naruto did seem to have gone through a good growth period that should serve him well in the future. You're gonna have to get along with Sai, though why did you ignore him anyway? Jiraiya has taught me that you should be able to read the atmosphere, and at times, I tried to take it literally. He obviously had his reasons for trying to pick up a fight, but since he had no negative feelings that would make me nervous, I decided it would be pointless to go about it like that, Naruto responded calmly. Even Guy doesn't just attack you, he first requests a challenge. Kakashi just shook his head. There was nothing wrong with what the blonde Uzumaki had said, he just didn't have a comment on it. I look forward to seeing how far you have gone with your training tomorrow. The Jonin waved his free hand before taking another direction. Once Kakashi had disappeared, Naruto looked up into the sky, just wondering what he could do. He had a lot of time before he was able to see the others. It would be later on. He had the whole day to himself. He didn't feel like training, he had done plenty of it during his time with Jiraiya. Now was a time to see the results of his training before looking into what he could improve on. Naruto placed his hands inside his pockets before walking deep into the village streets. He would have to navigate his way towards Ikaraku once more again. After that, he would need food, but the funds department were not looking too bright. Perhaps it was best to go to Tsunade and get a mission to do to earn something. He could do as many D-ranked missions as he liked before rewarding himself with a steaming miso ramen. Naruto nodded at that thought. He would go and do that. Hokage office. Back here so soon? Tsunade asked as Naruto walked into her office. I came here yesterday and that was to report on my return to the village, Naruto said. Is Jiraiya still around, or did he leave? The blonde asked. He wasn't able to find the man earlier, so he assumed he had disappeared from the village, not that he would find it surprising. He left, Tsunade said. He said he was going to follow a lead, didn't say where to. The fifth paused to study Naruto's expression. You don't seem surprised by that. The pervert doesn't like standing at one place, he likes moving around to exercise his freedom to go to any land he pleases to visit, Naruto said with an air of indifference. I'm here for a mission. What you can find for me after completing it, I will come back for more. Tsunade stared. Naruto stared back, causing her to sigh. The only difference with a couple of years ago is that you were loud about it, the blonde Kage said. Why do you want a mission? Others are still meeting with their teams, but you could join in if you like. My team meeting was short, Naruto said. Maybe Kakashi didn't feel like it today, the blonde said. In any case, I really need a mission. Any rank, even D rank, as long as it is within the walls of the village, I will do it. Since when do you willingly request for D-rank missions? The question seemed to amuse Naruto. In reality, it wasn't the question, he was amused by his past behavior. It hadn't mattered who had been in the chair, even with the Sandaime, he had demanded hard missions to be challenged. D-rank missions were just chores after all, and in his competition with Sasuke, he couldn't get on top while weeding grass and chasing rebellious cats. Since now, Naruto said. Now you are you going to give me the mission, Bachan? Later day. Kiba glared heatedly at the bottle of juice that was sitting in front of him. He wasn't alone. Members of Team Asuma and his teammates were also present along with Sakura. Team Guy would have been invited, but they were currently out on a mission. It wasn't the reason the Inuzuka was staring at the glass though, he was staring specifically because it was juice. He wanted to drink some alcohol. They were out with no one to tell them what to do and what not to do. His mother wouldn't even complain much if she knew he was drinking. Besides, he was a shinobi. There was that saying, old enough to kill, old enough to drink. Between killing and drinking, what was worse? Do we really have to drink this thing? Kiba asked, looking at Ino, who had organized everything. We don't have these kinds of nights often. Some sake would make it a special occasion. Sakura was quick to respond before Ino could. Not everyone drinks alcohol, Kiba. Some of us still see ourselves as teenagers and we want to live out our years doing the normal things that teenagers do. True, there was a lot of things in the shinobi world that went wrong and a very low moral standing ground. Even so, Sakura liked to believe that one could still decide how they lived their life regardless of the environment that surrounds them. Just because the world was surrounded by corrupt people didn't mean that they also had to be corrupt. If anything, Kiba found Sakura's answer to be dull. He didn't even have a response for it. If you want to drink something, you can and will at the after party, Ino responded calmly. We can all go if you don't mind. You need to loosen up every now and then. The Yamanaka paused and looked around. Where is Naruto anyway? I warned him about being late, Sakura said in a firm tone. If he runs late, there would be pain. She didn't want her teammate picking up their sensei's tardiness. It would just be bad. We're a bit early, Shikamaru said in a barely audible tone. He might still be busy or just finishing some things. I heard he was busy around the village all day doing missions, D-ranked missions, the Nara finished calmly. Sakura showed surprise in that. Naruto doing D-rank missions? She asked. He used to hate them. Even when we first went to our first mission outside the village, he had demanded a challenging mission from the Sandaime. It was the same thing with Tsunade-sama. She had found that behavior to be unbecoming, especially since he hadn't been showing any respect to their leaders. But Sakura had just come to realize that he was like that because he had held a special bond with them. Even though Tsunade was her master, she knew she couldn't take Naruto's place, and most likely didn't hold as much value to the blonde Hokage as he did. But it was alright. That sounds just like him, Ino said with a smile. Even though he would still end up being a deadweight during missions and leave all the job to Sasuke-kun. Just hearing, Shikamaru looked at Chuji with a sigh. He could not get used to this kind of attitude from Ino, and she could flip it effortlessly. The big teen was already at work, eating. The Nara just shook his head. It appeared that everything else could wait, but not food. Shikamaru turned his attention to Sakura when the pinkette responded to Ino. You shouldn't believe everything you hear, Ino, she said in a firm tone. Everything? Ino asked with a raised brow. Aren't you the one who told me that, Sakura? She was suddenly curious and surprised at what the friend of hers was talking about. There were things that the villagers spoke about what happened in Team 7, but she had not been saying anything because of those rumors but because Sakura had said so. I may have omitted the truth every now and then, Sakura said a bit uneasily when Hinata's eyes fell on her. Something wrong, Hinata? The Hyuga shook her head. Before Sakura could be asked questions on what she omitted, Naruto made his appearance known. Hey guys, he greeted with a huge smile and wave of his hand before sitting down beside Kiba, just across the girls. Sorry, I'm late, I forgot to check the time while I was doing some chores. Why were you even doing them anyway? Without your teammates? Sakura asked. Well, Naruto started, a bit sheepishly, I needed the money. You know, I don't have anyone to buy me things and to eat, I must work. It sucks being poor, Ino said without any thought. It does at times, Naruto agreed. This surprised some of his friends. Well, it is good to see you guys, he said, looking around the table. The last person he looked at was Hinata, and the girl quickly looked down. His smile just turned small, a bit charming with a hint of amusement in his eyes, but there was no word that left his mouth. Ino stared. Wow, she said with a smile. That was rather charming, you have grown quite well and your voice seemed a little down. Not bad at all, she said. Naruto smiled. If that is coming from you, Ino, I will take it with full compliments, the blonde said calmly before adding. You have grown rather beautifully yourself, admittedly. You stand out amongst your age group. Once again, Ino stared. Did Naruto just compliment her, and did she actually feel good about it? She shook her head. What was happening here? Maybe Kiba was right, they do need something to drink. The fact that Naruto appeared to be different from the loud boy she used to know was already a shock, but this was something else. Speaking of growing, Kiba started with a grin on his face. All of us here have graduated from being genins to become chunin. You're the only one rank lower than all of us, meaning you're our junior. The hell? Naruto exclaimed. This was certainly a surprise. He didn't think everyone would have moved on so quickly. Even Ino and Sakura had managed to get one before he could, considering how they performed at the chunin exams back then. It was something to smile about. Well, rankings don't really determine how strong you are. That wasn't completely true. The only reason he was still a chunin was because he never got the chance to enter the chunin exams in his time away from Konoha while his friends had the time. The fact that they have become chunin now means that they have become strong, and have graduated from being mere genins. Didn't that say their rank determined their strength? Personally for him, his rank didn't determine his rank, but that was only because he hasn't taken the time to be judged. Well, it can't be helped. When the others went to the chunin exams, you were still away, Shikamaru said. I was kind of hoping that you'd show up, Chuji added. I think most of us were hoping for that as well. I didn't know there were exams occurring, Naruto said. If I had known, I wouldn't have missed them. My last participation was ruined by the invasion after I had progressed to the next round of the finals, and that was after winning against all odds. He was just that awesome, wasn't he? I still say rank matters, Kiba butted in once again. We can prove it any time. Naruto grinned. I am up for that. How about arm wrestling? If I win, I am right and you're wrong. That would be too easy, Kiba said with a feral grin. I want to take you on in a real battle. I have not forgotten that you defeated me at the preliminary exams. Settled, Naruto said. I will take on tomorrow, but for now, how about we enjoy the night? I have missed you guys. Chapter 2. Not long ago, Naruto had graced this training ground as an idiot who only thought about being better than Sasuke and trying to look good in front of Sakura. The former had grown to be envious of his growth, so much that he decided to join Orochimaru and then attempt to kill him. The latter had never loved him. She had turned him down day and night, no matter how hard he had tried. Unrequited love was surely a bitter bitch. Well, at least he could exchange some notes with Jiraiya about the pains of the heart. Jiraiya's time was much more miserable. He had been young and naive, but it couldn't have been at a difficult time for him, being rejected so brutally, when he was alone, when he was trying so hard to be loved and to be appreciated. He was past those naive days though. He would no longer foolishly pursue things that could not get his hands on no matter what he tried. Besides, these days he was in it for something much bigger. It was safe to say that he had discarded his personal desires for something much bigger. He wanted to give his life a purpose, and he would give it that purpose. He just needed the time and enough courage to do what he needed to do. Naruto glanced around the training ground. He had shared so many memories with people he had considered as friends and family. He had been here a day ago with the new Team 7, but this time, it was a little different. He wasn't here on anyone's order. He was here because he wanted to test something. It had nothing to do with anyone, but his own ideals and what he wanted to see from these people that he called friends. He wasn't just going to see what Kiba could do. He wasn't that of an arrogant person, but the Inuzuka wasn't someone who could give him a challenge. He needed something much stronger to be challenged. He was, nevertheless, not here because he was looking for a challenge, but just wanted to see if these people were as strong as they made themselves to be. They had graduated to higher ranks than he had. He was still just a mere genin, and they had higher ranks. Kiba was exploding about how being ranked higher than him meant he was stronger. It was a false impression, Naruto knew, and he was going to prove it to the Inuzuka. Are you going to just space out all day? Kiba demanded from Naruto. The black-haired was becoming slightly impatient with the blonde Uzumaki. Naruto was clearly lost in his thought, but Kiba didn't have all day. He wanted to show off and then go off to do something else. He had duties to attend and missions to attend. He still had his team meeting even. Don't tell me that you're having second thoughts? Kiba asked with a grin. If you're afraid of fighting, we can call it quits. Truth be told, although Kiba was confident about his abilities, he was a little nervous. Naruto hadn't been as skilled as Sasuke or Neji, but he had the power to fight off those two. He had won against a prodigy, and he now looked completely different from the way he was back then. Naruto's eyes fell on Kiba for a moment with nothing in them. He then smiled. You don't frighten me, Kiba, Naruto said calmly. I'm a little glad that everyone else is here. You are all my friends, and I want to test something. I want to know if you are really strong enough to stand what is about to come. Shikamaru grew curious the moment Naruto said those words, with that mysterious tone. Perhaps he was feeling something in the air, but he felt there had been a chill that went down his spine when Naruto spoke. The blonde was talking about something that neither of them knew. He wanted to know what it was that Naruto was talking about, because the blonde looked serious. Naruto of the old may have been a loud-mouthed idiot, but even then, Shikamaru had taken some things he said seriously. As troublesome as it was, this appeared to be something he could not simply ignore, especially since this Naruto was different from the old one. What do you mean by that, Naruto? Shikamaru asked. We know we are friends, you don't have to remind us, Sakura said. We are missing Sasuke, but we will always be friends, no matter what. Sasuke had deserted Konoha, but they were still planning to get him back. He was still their teammate and friend, he was just lost at the moment, but they would get him back and things would go back to normal. Sakura was certain of it. She had hope and she would not lose it. So no matter what happened with any one of them, they would always be friends. As smart as she was, Sakura was certainly naive. Naruto would have thought that someone experienced as Tsunade would have taught her better. Jiraiya had showed him the cold truth of how people live and the rot within the hearts of men. He had seen so many despicable things that people do to each other. It was unpleasant, and it made him see the hearts of some people as the hearts of evil. There were things that people could never turn back from. If he went through what he wanted to do, she would not call him a friend. They would look at him with contempt. And perhaps as his teammate, Sakura would feel a lot more obligated to stand over him to end his life. However, something had to change if she wanted to have a chance in making that miracle. During these past years, I saw so many things, the good and the bad, but mostly the bad. One thing remained constant: if you are weak, those strong will abuse you. It's not always the case though. Friends can fill the gaps. Where one fails, a friend can fill that gap. Naruto said before shaking his head. Perhaps this is a little too much for you. They have been sheltered in this village for far too long. Perhaps there are a few things that they too have experienced, but they were still ignorant to what truly happens in the world outside. Naruto only hoped that they stayed together at all times, because it was this friendship that would save them. This friendship was important, and was something he always wanted to have look at. It would serve to remind him of the life he once had. Kiba, you're still just a mere chunin. Your rank truly means nothing. You say that you have grown strong, but so have I. I wasn't simply just traveling around the world, seeing different kinds of people, drunkards, whores, twisted people, sinister men, and following Jiraiya as he drinks and sleep with different women, Naruto said as he took a stance. I was also training. I won't compare, but my training was brutal. Kiba noticed. Naruto's expression changed entirely, even the look on his eyes. It wasn't the same Naruto who had been smiling moments ago, the same Naruto who had been drinking with his friends last night. This was a different person. He was staring at a battle-hardened shinobi. Ready, buddy? Kiba said to Akamaru, with a grin. Confidence before a battle was never an issue for the Inuzuka. Naruto knew that. He just hoped that the confidence didn't bring out that demon of arrogance. Sasuke had possessed much of it in abundance, and in the end, he had ended up being nearly surpassed by an idiot who didn't know damn about what a skill was. Without even waiting for the Inuzuka to attack him, Naruto disappeared via gusts of winds. Kiba felt a breeze hit his body from behind. While he wasn't sure because his nose couldn't pick up the scent cleanly because of the breeze, he jumped forward along with Akamaru just for safe measures. Before he even hit the ground, the Inuzuka twisted around, having sensed Naruto. The blonde was in the same spot he had been a second ago, hands clasped together. Naruto's eyes were fully focused on the Inuzuka as he prepared his jutsu. He was merely gathering the wind around him with his hands clasped together, but once done, he would release something that would vanish in the blink of an eye. It would be either Kiba has the speed to avoid it or not. If he isn't fortunate, he would be hit. Kiba finally landed on the ground. Naruto wasn't attacking, but he would attack. Kiba was certain of it. He may not have been the brightest, but he had been brighter than the blonde Uzumaki, and he could tell without anyone needing to give him a hint that Naruto was preparing an attack. Given the time he was taking to prepare it, it was apparent that it was going to be something else. Still, when had Naruto learned to execute complex jutsus? As far as he knew, the blonde only knew to use the Rasengan and those shadow clones. He could only use 2 jutsus back then. Could he have improved that much? There was the wind. It was the blonde's doing. Let's not wait for him, Akamaru, Kiba said to his loyal partner. In response, Akamaru barked. Gutsuga. Using his beloved combination jutsu, Kiba rotated along with Akamaru in ferocious speeds. You could not even see the two from the rotation. It took seconds for the jutsu to slam towards Naruto's form. The blonde watched with a careful eye as Kiba shot towards him. When the chunin was just inches away from him, the blonde jumped up in a burst of speed. The speed in which he jumped up was so fast that the ground below him shattered slightly, causing dust to pick up. Kiba hit the ground, but it didn't appear as if there had been something because the rotation dug through the ground with little effort before he burst out on another side, lunging up towards Naruto's form. Naruto looked down for a moment before his eyes looked to the other side, the direction he wanted to go. The Gutsuga was upon him within seconds and slammed into his chest. A second later, Naruto burst into a puff of smoke. The blonde appeared on the ground, eyes looking up as Kiba's jutsu turned its fangs towards his form. This was still something else, despite dodging it. Naruto was merely looking for a way to stop the jutsu, not a way to avoid it. It was a lot of more interesting that way, and it gave him plenty of options. Not only that, but it also weakened the will of the opponent. He wasn't about to start fighting in a barbaric action without any honor, but fighting smart with full understanding of ninjutsu was the best option. It was even more of a bonus since this wasn't a life and death situation. Naruto held out his right hand, the palm facing the incoming Gutsuga. Wind tornado. Wind gathered within seconds and then started rotating dangerously as it expanded in size, heading towards the incoming jutsu. The rotation was made to be as powerful as Kiba's because if it was weaker, it would be of no use to him. The tornado was rotating towards the same direction as Kiba's Gutsuga. When the two jutsus met, Kiba's movements were halted from going further, but he didn't stop spinning. He kept rotating and then started moving slowly toward Naruto. The blonde slid back slightly before holding out his left hand and joined it with his right hand, to increase the output of chakra in his jutsu. Once Naruto was sure that his chakra had taken over the rotation, he released bolts of lightning within the rotation. The lightning was so much that the lightning currents burst through the tornado, followed by a pained cry from Kiba and Akamaru. It wasn't something that lasted for a long period before Naruto allowed the rotation to stop whilst the lightning did a number on Kiba and his partner. It went on for more than a minute before the tornado burst and dispersed. Kiba fell down the ground unconscious. Everyone blinked seeing the end of it. Being the medic, Sakura quickly rushed towards Kiba to check if he was alright. She had been certain that he was unconscious with the way he fell and the smoke coming out of his body as well as Akamaru's. The pinkette knelt the ground and inspected Kiba for a moment before looking at Akamaru. They were fine and had no wounds on their bodies. "Why did you rush out like that?" Naruto asked, looking down at Sakura. He hadn't moved a muscle when the girl rushed over. Kiba had fallen just next to his feet. He hadn't moved, not an inch. Perhaps he should have just ignored this little action. "I'm a medic," Sakura said. "When someone falls, I react instinctively." Naruto stared for a moment before shaking his head. "That is growth, I'm glad," he said with a smile. "I'm a little disappointed with Kiba though. His jutsu wasn't anything serious, but Kiba had allowed himself to be caught and then it was the end of the battle. No, it wasn't even a battle. Then again, Kiba's style of fighting wasn't suited for fighting against an all-round fighter like him. When going against him, the Inuzuka would always be at a disadvantage. Still, Naruto wanted them to be stronger. He hoped that the others were far stronger than this, because he wanted them to be strong enough to stop him. They were his friends, they accepted him when the village resented his very existed. He was going to betray them. It would be poetic and much more satisfying if they were to be the ones to end him. However, if this was the best that he could expect from them, then they could do nothing. "Disappointed?" Sakura asked, a bit puzzled. This was a different Naruto from the one back then. The blonde she knew wouldn't have said something like that, and he wouldn't have dispatched of Kiba so easily. True, he did win against the Inuzuka back then, and then, he wasn't well trained. He hadn't been helpless then, but still not that skilled. She had been even more baffled when he won against Niji. Well, that battle had been won purely on willpower. Skill had nothing to do with it, but this time, Naruto had skills. Of course, she still thought he could not hold a candle to Sasuke. Her Uchiha would always be a step better than Naruto. If the blonde had improved this much, then Sasuke should be a step ahead of the blonde. By then, the others were stepping closer to the two and the dog. Ino had her hands around her waist. "Since when did you become like this?" "I should not be surprised at your use of both wind and lightning elements, but I am," Shikamaru said, eyeing Naruto carefully. When the blonde left the village, he didn't know any elemental chakra manipulation, but now he could use two. The blonde has always been a chakra powerhouse. That was something anyone in their group could not disagree with. Shikamaru was confident enough in his assessment that he could say that the blonde had more chakra than anyone in their generation. It wouldn't even be an exaggeration to assume that he had more or as much chakra as some jonins in the village. That was 3 years ago, and the blonde had gone out to train with the Sannin. If he hadn't improved or learned how to use his chakra, it would have been out of ignorance from his part or Jiraiya's negligence in Naruto's training. Naruto merely smiled. "You can't expect me to be the same after all these years. Besides, I have always been keen to learn more jutsus. Perhaps I lacked the intelligence and a mentor to teach me back then, but with dedication, I managed to make the most of my large chakra reserves. My intention was never to actually win a bet with Kiba, but to actually judge your strength. I have seen that Sakura has grown much better than I would have expected. We may not be very powerful, but I hope you guys stay as friends and united. Of course, there will be disagreements, but I hope you never forsake your friendship." "Why do you make it sound as if you're no longer going to be a part of us?" Ino was the first to ask the question. Naruto smiled but shook his head. He did not respond to the question. I guess we must talk about our former comrade Uchiha Sasuke. We went out to get him back, and we came back heavily injured. Some of us faced life and death situations in trying to retrieve him. I failed. I could not defeat Sasuke because he was better than I was. Perhaps to you guys it may not be much, he was our friend and brother. He chose to abandon everything for power. I won't comment on anything regarding that or whether he is on his right mind or not. You are all free to make your own judgments based on what you see. I'll keep my thoughts to myself. In any case, if I come across him, I will fight to bring him back to the village, because he is wanted back in this village. I don't care about the politics, but I will fight him, and if I win, he will be brought back to the Hidden Leaf. Of course, that will depend on some other things. There was a very dangerous message that was left unsaid, Shikamaru noted, but he didn't say anything regarding it. But from those words alone, he could tell that the blonde didn't hold any attachment towards the Uchiha, or perhaps it was just his imagination. What was apparent was that Naruto had many thoughts in his head and that it was deeply concerning. This was different, but the Nara was certain that he would get to see something soon. Sasuke is still our comrade, Naruto, Sakura said in a firm tone. He is just not okay. Ino was the only one who seemed to agree with that assessment from Sakura. Well, the two have always been fangirls to the Uchiha, they have always tried their best to gain his attention. Naruto wasn't going to comment on it. But he was still disappointed that Sakura had remained the naive little girl she had been 3 years ago. He would have thought that Tsunade would have taught her better. Well, the Godame had run off from Konoha to avoid dealing with her problems. Should he really be surprised? All aside, you have certainly improved, Shikamaru said. He still thought that Naruto was still hiding some of his abilities. 2 elements? That is impressive, considering none of us have gone so far. Well, you focus on your clan jutsus, and we with too much chakra have no other option but to make use of our reserves by learning all the ninjutsu we can. Naruto responded calmly. He had learned that it wasn't the number of jutsus one had on his arsenal that made one powerful, but how he used the jutsu. He could possess 1,000 jutsus, but if he didn't know how to use them, he would end up being defeated by one with only a couple of jutsu under their arsenal. This was disappointing though. I'd expected a bit of fireworks knowing that you've always been explosive and Kiba has never been subtle, Shikamaru couldn't help but say. It has proved to be an interesting revelation nonetheless. There was a side of Naruto he had just seen, a side of the blonde he had never thought he would see. As much as curious as he was about this new change and the hidden messages in the blonde's words, Shikamaru wasn't going to ask too many questions. It was just going to be troublesome doing so, and he really didn't want anything that would give him a headache. You don't always get what you want, Naruto said with a small smile. Life is full of disappointments. Tell me about it, Ino was quick to say. Naruto turned to the blonde Yamanaka. There was unquestionably something in mind when she said those words. She was certainly not going in the same direction as he was, but Naruto didn't comment on it, he just let it slide. Should he tell them about his status as a Jinchuriki? Naruto pondered on the thought for a couple of seconds before shaking his head. He decided against doing so. They would find out eventually, and it was going to be soon since he didn't have much time in this village. Yes, there would only be a couple of days before he lets loose and become the enemy of the world. He had been thinking it would be nice if they heard it from him, but since most of the village knew about it, they had to use their heads to figure things out. The Sandame's law no longer applied, did it? Naruto couldn't answer that with confidence, but the subject of the Kyuubi was still a touchy one within the Hidden Leaf. Forest of Death. Sai was honestly surprised when Naruto suddenly disappeared into thin air. He had been watching the blonde meditate for a couple of minutes within the forest. It was part of his job to observe the blonde Jinchuriki. In keeping up with those duties, he had to follow Naruto almost everywhere when he had the time. Danzo wanted to know everything there was to know about the weapon. There was the undeniable fact that the blonde had returned to the village much stronger than anyone would have anticipated. Danzo hadn't thought it would be likely without his hand, but they were living this reality. In any case, his job was to discover the tricks of the blonde Uzumaki before his master could decide on what to do. There hasn't been much to look at since he started observing. It was still early days nevertheless. He was going to do missions with the Uzumaki. Naturally, he would see much of the blonde's abilities then. It was when he was having those thoughts that Naruto suddenly disappeared into thin air, leaving him blinking a couple of times. He hadn't known that the blonde could move so fast and disappear without even leaving a trace of his presence. It shouldn't be surprising, it has an ability that be used regularly. Sai's senses picked up with his hair standing as Naruto suddenly appeared from behind him. The operative jumped forward as he twisted around to face the blonde. As he came to face the blonde, Naruto as lunging towards him, right hand stretching towards his throat far faster than the rest of his body. In the blink of an eye, the hand was gripping his throat. It felt as if he was gripped by an iron hand. When the two hit the ground, Naruto brought Sai much closer to him, staring at him with an expressionless mask. Sai tried to get loose from the grip, but Naruto would not let go. I find this to be annoying. You mustn't do this or otherwise I will treat you like an enemy. Sure, you don't mean any harm, but if you keep this up, you will get on my nerves and I won't be held responsible for what happens next. As soon as Naruto finished those words, he let go of Sai. Sai took a couple of steps backwards, with his hands on his throat. Once he was confident all was well, he looked up at Naruto with a blank mask on his face. How about we test what you can really do? Since the blonde knew that he was watching him, there was nothing to lose in requesting a sparring session with the blonde. He would be killing all the stones and he would give his report to his master. If Naruto agreed, he wouldn't hold back, but fight with everything he has to see what the blonde could really do. Naruto tilted his head to the side. Me fight you? Interesting but no. The blonde said with a shake of his head. Again? Sai asked. What are you afraid of? The last time when he was being introduced to Team 7 he had tried attacking the blonde but the Uzumaki hadn't responded to his attempt to start a sparring session. If his method had been wrong last time, this one had to be right but he was still being rejected. How was he going to get some results without actually engaging the blonde in a battle? I fear myself, you, a pet of Danzo, I do not fear. Perhaps if you were coming with pure intentions, I wouldn't be against fighting you but as long as you're not truthful to your purpose, I will not indulge you. Naruto responded calmly. Life hadn't been too kind to him, but it has taught him many valuable lessons. Understanding humans was fundamental, and a core to unlocking the secrets to the hearts of men. Jiraiya has agonized for many years in his quest for peace, but to get to that, you needed to understand people. The peace was for people and by people. To understand how such a world could be led to a peace, Naruto had dug deep into understanding people. The Kyuubi was a huge help in sensing the emotions and intentions of people. With this background, people like Sai could not really hide everything from him. He didn't know what the black-haired wanted from him, but he understood that the agent wasn't being sincere. His assumption wasn't simply based on the fact that Danzo was an evil bastard, it was based on what he felt when looking at Sai. You have certainly changed and this facade isn't the same you show when with your so-called friends, Sai stated calmly. Before his friends, Naruto acted way too kindly and had smiles. Not as big as before, well, from what Sai has been told and has heard, but still smiles nonetheless. With him, and when he was alone, an expressionless mask appeared on his face. If anything, it always looked as if the blonde was thinking deep about something serious. Sai couldn't even begin to guess what it was that the blonde was thinking about, but it was something deep. He would have to report this to his master. Naruto smiled, a bitter sad smile that threatened to kill off the mask he wore. Of course, he had changed. He knew that better than anyone did. For someone who didn't know him to say it as if they have known him for a long time was something of a slap on the cheek. The fact that he has grown was a welcome change. He was no longer that naive brat who used to shout out every thought he had. Perhaps that was the only thing that gave him good dreams, but the rest of his thoughts that have come with growth and understanding people didn't make him sleep well at night. He was afraid of what he was going to do. Not only that, his heart was wavering. Perhaps there was another way to go about things. However, he didn't have all the time in this world. Life was a fleeting thing, no one lived forever. If he just continued living as he would normally, what would he change? Naruto wanted to leave something big for this world. He was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. It wasn't that he had come to think that he was born for a purpose or to bring about change in this world. No, it wasn't anything like that. He has always been someone who went against the crappy notion of fate. Everyone had a choice on how he or she lives his or her life. He made a choice and it would affect his future. His choice may not be noble in the eyes on this world, but he hoped, and truly hoped with all the life in him, that he was truly right and his choice would bring the desired effect to the minds of men and how things work around in this world. It would leave him broken and shattered even in the afterlife to learn that he had been wrong. He would so much as beg the devil to give him a second chance to live again and do things differently. Looking back at Sai, Naruto shook his head to clear off his thoughts. Can you leave me alone, Sai? I want to get back to my meditation. Sai stared for a couple of seconds. It was a clear change from the blonde, but he wasn't going to question. Staying here wasn't going to earn him any favors. It would be best if he didn't alienate himself with Naruto before they even get to start doing missions together. He would never get close and completing his other mission would be even difficult. Watching Sai leave, Naruto sighed deeply with a large frown on his face before settling down once more. He wanted to meditate, but he could not get his concentration. It was difficult to calm the tension around his body and the raging thoughts at the back of his head. If anything, it was like there was a little insect singing a bad song in a very loud voice. He couldn't sweat it away because it was slippery. The blonde opened his eyes and stared into the space ahead of him. It was nothing but a deep forest that crept of an eerie silence, and a fear-inducing sense of danger, yet Naruto wasn't afraid of it. He had nearly faced death in this very forest during the chunin exams. Yes, that had been when he first met Orochimaru, but he had been dumb to know he was fighting against a Sannin. Well, it hadn't mattered anyway, the snake hadn't been after him but his Sasuke, for the Sharingan of course. Thinking of the Uchiha, Naruto could only shake his head. He had no doubt that Sasuke was fully aware that Orochimaru was after his body, but had still gone along with the snake because he had wanted power. His growth had scared the Uchiha, and he thought he was being held back. A powerful sadist like Orochimaru could help him, perhaps that was true, but it all remained to be seen how things would end up. At this stage, Naruto wasn't apprehensive about the Uchiha. Truth be told, the Uchiha was insignificant to the dream he was chasing. Being Hokage was a noble, but the quest for peace was even greater. It gave his life a massive purpose that he would surely fulfill, if he dealt with his doubts. I find it laughable that you can have a problem wearing this mask when all your life you have done nothing but wear a glowing mask that no one was able to see through, the QB said to Naruto from within its chambers. Kurama was aware of what his host wanted to do. However, considering how enormous the task was, he really doubted that the blonde would be able to pull it off with his current level. Naruto didn't have the kind of power needed for what he wanted to do. If he wanted to take on the whole world, he needed much more power than he currently had. The Bijou was sure that Naruto knew that he needed much more power than what he had. You had to reach the heights of men like Hashirama and Madara to be able to accomplish it. He didn't like Madara, and perhaps that was an understatement. Nonetheless, the man was still a powerful warrior. Naruto had to reach that height in order to succeed. At his current level, he was just going to die young and as nothing more than a child of the Yondaime who lost his sanity. All the thoughts he has had would be for nothing, and he would certainly resent himself over his failure. It was no matter to Kurama, but he was still the blonde's prisoner. He wasn't about to get himself degraded by mere humans, and they still shared the same body. If the blonde died, he would die. Even though it would only be temporary, he would still die. The QB then drew a thoughtful look on his face at the thought of the seal Naruto was using. Unless he was missing something, Minato had died, and yet that part of him went along with the Yondaime Hokage. Did it mean that the same would apply for Naruto if he died? They were using the same seal. Naruto had to make changes to it for him to avoid the same fate as his other half. The only problem to that was that the blonde wasn't that of a master of the sealing art to fully dismantle the complex seal keeping him at bay. The only chance Naruto had was through weakening the seal. That was the best thing that Naruto could do at this stage. Well, the blonde would have to take some time off for training if he was serious about his agenda. Then, he could get to work on the seal. It was weakening with each usage, and he was pushing more and more chakra out of the seal. Kurama would not be against getting the blonde to follow a more rigorous plan of training that would see him with deep wounds. He would be there to heal the blonde. Naturally, that meant using his chakra. This is different. It fights with everything I stood for when growing up. Killing people has never been something I thought of. Human life is fragile yet so precious. The thought of killing has repulsed me. Perhaps a bit ironic since my senseis have been killing people for a long time and yet, I have had no problem with them. I can say that their reasons have always been just, but that is just a way of justifying the action. Death is death, no matter what. When things get bad in this world, it's kill or be killed. But I don't want to live in such a world. I wanted a happy world. It is sad that I will never get to see though. I will be doing the very thing I have hated seeing. I must plunge this world into darkness, and betray the precious friends who have accepted me. Any normal person would have a difficult time in grasping this world thing, QB. You don't have the same emotions as I do, and you don't value humans as I do. Another irony in that, Naruto said, but he didn't say anything further on it. I guess being human is what brought you back into the village. However, when the thought first came, you seemed confident of following it through. Perhaps seeing these people again has caused a change in your heart, Kurama said. He was most concerned about seeing the seal become loose rather than Naruto's emotional struggles. It didn't kill him to be nice and encourage the blonde to go on his killing spree. Perhaps he was trying to banish the thought that he had become a little familiar with the blonde since his near escape from the seal when that perverted Sannin loosened the seal. Kurama would always curse himself for enjoying himself too much with the Sannin that he ended up being sealed once more without escaping. Naruto had been willing in letting him take the body. In any case, the blonde had come to with a miserable look on his face, and yet, he didn't throw a fit at him or blame him for the near death of his sensei. It was true that the experience changed the blonde, but Kurama had expected the blonde to come out guns blazing with hate, but there had been none of that. Kurama had been surprised. But he should have expected it. It was something typical of the naive brat he had known. Naruto didn't have much capacity to hate. Even when that Uchiha nearly killed him and he had to supply with blonde with chakra just to heal wounds that would have killed him, the blonde still didn't hate the Uchiha. He may not care as much as he used to, but he didn't hate the Uchiha, not even a little. There was also no resentment towards him for everything. Kurama was still curious about how the blonde would react when he does find out that he had killed both his parents trying to escape the ceiling that now sees him inside the blonde. Not just being human but kindness. Naruto paused for a long minute before speaking. I must throw it all away. I don't know if it will be possible to throw the kindness away, but if I don't, this journey will break me. Well, I wouldn't mind if that happened, Kurama stated. You lose it, I will end up getting out a bit more often than being locked up in this cell. Naruto smiled. You're not going to stop being honest about your attempt to flee from the scene, are you? Why should I? Naruto shook his head. That is something you desire and something I won't give to you. This is a sin that I must commit because I need your power. It is important for my survival. If I cannot survive, then all the agonizing thoughts I have heard until now would have been for nothing. It is important that I survive. No matter how painful it will be for me, I must bear it all. Not long ago, I was fighting for appreciation from this village which has snubbed my existence. But it was that experience that led me to conclude that regardless of the reason, when people have something in common to work towards, they really do stick with each other in unity. These people were united in their hatred for me and fear of you. Soon, they will resent me once more, and it will be deserved. That will wound me, but I must still survive. The only thing that will likely kill me before anything will be my emotional state. If I cannot control what I feel, I will not survive, but I'm sure you will be happy. An insane host will make it easy for you to break free from your shackles. The effort he had put in trying to become the kind of person that the villagers would recognize hadn't been for naught, even though he was going to play a different kind of game this time around. It had been his desire, perhaps born out of loneliness and being ignored, but it had been something he wished for with all his heart. If he didn't listen to Jiraiya's rambles after that incident, things may have happened. He may have returned a naive idiot who fought to build friendships, be recognized to become the greatest Hokage in history. For now, that was something of a lost dream. He still had the desire in him, but it would not materialize. He was following another route, one filled of pain and grief. It wouldn't be anything new to his life. He was familiar with feelings as those. The childhood he had hadn't been one full of roses and smiles. Even so, Naruto was going to continue with all those emotions and much more. Perhaps this time around, things will be different because this was his choice, even if he was wavering. There is no need for me to be dishonest about anything when I know that you're likely to find out about it anyway. You're not stupid as you were back then. I'm not saying you're smart, just not stupid, Kurama said. If you're serious, you should leave this village as soon as you can because the more you stay around, the more attached to it you become to it. Leaving it will not be easy. You may end up not even doing anything. Naruto stared into the sky for a couple of moments as he thought of something Haku said. It was when one had something precious to protect that they became much stronger. Not the exact words, but it went along those lines. What was precious to him? Was it friends or the ideal that he would bloody his hands in zeal for it to become a reality? The Uzumaki shook his head as the only picture that came to mind was that one of the friends he treasured. Perhaps this was why he was calling this a betrayal of his friends, more specifically, his feelings. Foundation Hideout. Sai was kneeling before his master, ready to deliver his report. Danzo standing along a passage within a dark place of the hideout. He had been on his way to attend some other business with some people before Sai came along. He assumed it had something to do with the Uzumaki since that was his primary mission. Still, he wasn't expecting a report into the matter this time around. They had to first go on a mission, and given Sai's difficulty playing the part like those emotional shinobi out in the village, he had expected things to be difficult. Even with that difficulty, he didn't expect things to fail. Failure wasn't an option for his people. What is it? Naruto is different from what we know, Danzo-sama. He is like a completely different person from the notes I received about his character. Sai said in a firm tone just to emphasize his point. The notes he had studied were proving to be useless because nothing in them compared to the Uzumaki he had to deal with. Danzo raised a ghost eyebrow. He wasn't surprised, just curious. The blonde person who was famous for being an idiot and loud-mouthed brat had grown. The former Uzumaki was nothing more than a waste of the Kyuubi's chakra. He was a Jinchuriki, yet he could not control the power under his command. Not to mention he was pathetic for a Jinchuriki. There was no doubt in Danzo's mind that in that level, Naruto wouldn't have stood a chance against any other Jinchuriki. He would not take into account the fact that the blonde did manage to defeat a fully transformed tailed beast along with the help of the toads. The Jinchuriki of Shikaku was a different matter. Danzo was still willing to give the blonde some credit for his efforts nonetheless. The result had surprised even him, even though no one refused to believe it. His people had seen it, so had Umbu. Getting back on the subject at hand, Danzo spoke to Sai. What is it that you have learned? Not much about his abilities, but he is powerful and not stupid. He won't just jump into a fight. I have tried to provoke him into a fight twice, but he has rejected those advances. I still don't know anything about his strength as a Jinchuriki. That is something he never talks about. Sai said. If you were to meet him, you'd perhaps be able to see some things that I am not able to see. He knows that I am from you and doesn't seem to hold that lightly. Danzo narrowed his eyes slightly. The blonde had been training with Jiraiya. The Sannin was knowledgeable. If Jiraiya felt that Naruto was ready, he would have told him most things he knew about the hidden leaf. Part of taking in an apprentice was sharing with them the wealth of knowledge you possessed. He wasn't going to do something as to meet the blonde at this stage. Tsunade wasn't as movable as the Sandaime. She had her moments of playing things hard even though she was like her sensei. Her temper made her a bit uncontrollable, and it would be difficult to calculate the risks involved if she found out that he was meeting Naruto, the person she seems to hold dear more than anyone else in this village. I will send someone else to confirm what you have said and then decide which action to take. Continue with your observations in the meantime. Hi. A couple of days later. Hokage office. Tsunade didn't have the same smile as she had when Naruto returned to the village. There was no love for the blonde that had suddenly decided to pack its bags and leave her heart. She still loved the brat who brought her back to this village. Perhaps it was out of concern for his mentality that she was sitting in this office, staring at him with a long expression on her face. Aside from doing some chores as missions, Naruto's presence in the village was never felt by anyone. Even some of his friends mentioned that the only time they got to see him was when he was having his lunch at Ikaraku Ramen. That was the only place he made regular appearances at. With Kakashi out of the village, she didn't want to take Team 7 out for a mission because of these new changes in Naruto. Yamato didn't know Naruto as much as Kakashi did. When the blonde was being like this, he needed a leader who understood him better than someone who would react instinctively to things that would not trouble anyone. If a situation came to that, it would cause some troubles. Aside from that, Tsunade was worried. This wasn't the same Naruto that she knew. She had been struggling to grasp it when he returned and even when Jiraiya said that he had changed. She had thought that once he spent a couple of days with his friend, he would be alright, but there was no change. If anything, things were getting worse. Naruto had been meeting with his friends back then, but now he was no longer doing so. The only time they could talk to him was when he was having his lunch at Ikaraku Ramen. Sakura saw him for morning Team 7 exercises, but that was that. Any invitations for doing something were humbly rejected. I'm sorry for calling you out like this on your day off, Tsunade said. Naruto shook his head. I was actually just chilling at the hot springs listening to the sound of steaming water. I don't know, ever since Jiraiya-sensei showed them to me, I have come to enjoy how relaxing they are. Of course I like it better when it is just me alone. Given that you're his student, I thought you'd be more than willing to have time out in them with girls or just peep like him. Naruto smiled. Don't compare me to that pervert, he said in a light tone. I may be his student, but I don't have his tastes. Yes, Tsunade said with a snort. Says the brat you invented a perverted jutsu. Naruto couldn't help but laugh at the thought of his jutsu. That jutsu has worked wonders, it worked against the old man and many other shinobi. Tsunade shook her head as she responded in a very strong tone. That was because the Sandaime was a pervert. Whilst he was graceful about it, Jiraiya doesn't hide it, she said. In any case, it is good to see you smiling. You hardly smile these days. Naruto wasn't going to tell Tsunade that there was just a lot for him to think about because he knew she would come back with so many questions that he would not want to answer. Knowing the woman, she would insist, and perhaps even use the threat of violence as a way to get him to talk. I have my moments, Naruto said in a calm tone. But you need not worry about me. I'm just one of the many that you must look after in this village. Besides, if Jiraiya-sensei was here, he'd tell you not to worry about a damn thing. Tsunade couldn't disagree with that. The Sannin never seemed to worry about Naruto, well, at least to in front of her. In any case, he had told her not to worry. Even though Naruto has changed, there was nothing to worry about. Did he tell you when he will return? Naruto shook his head. During the last year of our training trip, he'd disappear for weeks. It was mostly keeping in track with his spy network. Well, he also doesn't like staying at one place, Naruto said. He is more concerned about the Akatsuki. For some reason, he hasn't been forthcoming about details when it comes to them. But knowing him, he could be laughing madly in the company of some ladies boasting about his greatness. Tsunade blinked as the thought of a grinning Jiraiya appeared in her mind. The woman shook her head, muttering, "That damn pervert." After a couple of moments of silence, Tsunade spoke once more. "Well, I'm glad that you've grown though. At this stage, I won't have to worry much with you succeeding me," she said with a large smile. Naruto appeared genuinely happy to hear that, Tsunade could tell, but there seemed to be some disappointment in his eyes. No, it was great sadness. Tsunade could not tell what brought it up. Perhaps she wasn't even seeing it right. "And when I said I would become Hokage one day, people thought it would never happen," the blonde said happily. "If you dream big and make the effort, you will succeed." Still, who could have thought that an orphan, someone who was ignored by the villagers, could be considered for succeeding you, Bie-chan? Tsunade took great care to hold her mask when Naruto said those words. It was not out of sadness over the childhood Naruto had, but the thought that Naruto still didn't know about his parents. Jiraiya said since Naruto didn't ask, he hadn't brought it up. He had focused on giving the blonde better training and getting him to experience life in fullness. The Godain didn't want to go into a path where she would end up discussing that kind of a subject, so she decided to drift off from that subject. While I am happy that you're still smiling, I'm not happy that you have been keeping to yourself, Tsunade said in a serious tone, eyes staring intently at the blonde. Do you want to tell me what is going on, Naruto? If there is a problem, I'm sure I can help you. You have people you can talk to, you have friends. Naruto had been hoping she would forget about this and just focus on other things. He would be more than willing to talk about the prospect of him becoming Hokage, even though he knew that the time for that would not come. Well, if he decided to quit his ways, he could try to win the villagers' approval for the succession battle. It wasn't impossible to get the villagers to behave before him. It needed a little more of effort from him, and the passion. He had seen it before. At the chunin exams finals, they had applauded his victory over Niji. If he was able to do impressive things, they were willing to recognize it. Despite those thoughts, Naruto wasn't thinking of quitting. It was appealing. Everything he had desired before he left the village, and the dream was within the realm of possibilities. Well, at least he could be happy knowing that his dream wasn't something that he couldn't have achieved, but it was something very possible. There are no problems that need friends, Bie-chan. I have friends. I don't need to be reminded of that. Besides, when have I been the one to bottle things? Naruto asked with a smile, head tilted to the side. Tsunade shook her head, remembering the blonde of the loud-mouthed brat who had caused her many headaches since they grew acquainted. But this was a different Naruto who was well-mannered and didn't give her any of those troubling migraines. He didn't cause anyone problems, and if Jiraiya was to be believed, the blonde was capable of protecting himself. Even so, she could not help but worry. You're like my child, you know. I get worried when my instincts tell me something is wrong, Tsunade said in quiet tone. Naruto smiled. I've always wanted someone to care for me and love me. It greatly pleases me knowing that someone as you cares for me. But it also greatly hurt him knowing that he would have to betray these people who care for him. Even though he was smiling happily, Naruto was full of tears in the inside. Perhaps the Kyuubi was right, he shouldn't have come back to this village because this was making things difficult for him. It was not the second thought, but the pain that followed the first thought. I'm happy to know that you care, Naruto said once more. I'm going to the forest of death to release my thoughts. There might be some noise, please don't mind it. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. She wanted to observe something like that. The request was curious, but she wanted to see what he would be doing exactly that could make so much noise that she would need to worry about things. Naruto didn't really show off his abilities, so when he would be showing them, she would really get to know what Jiraiya meant by saying that the blonde could protect himself against enemies. What exactly are you going to be doing that will make noise? Naruto smiled innocently. Some things, he said. Tsunade shook her head. She couldn't go there by herself, but she would send someone over to watch the blonde. Training Ground 44. The forest did have its frightening moments, but it wasn't anything that scared the adults away. There were some dangerous animals that could take on a genin and butcher him to death, but for someone like him who has experienced battles, he would have slipped up for an animal to get the jump on him. The forest was nevertheless a good place to train. Naruto was standing in the middle of trees, Sage mode already activated. He could not last forever in this mode, but there was a way through clones of making him go longer. There were no risks involved in the process even. Senjutsu was good for the body and mind, only if you knew how to use it. Other people who tried to absorb this chakra for their use would turn into frogs. One thing he enjoyed about Senjutsu was the heightened senses. Even now, he could sense the chakra signatures of those people watching him. He didn't need to count them because at this stage, he just wanted to test his limits and work on his endurance when using Sage mode. After stretching his muscles, Naruto held out his right hand. On the palm of his hand, a Rasengan began to form. The jutsu quickly took shape within a couple of seconds. It was when that it started taking another form. 4 wind blades stretched out of the jutsu and began to spin around the Rasengan. This created a different jutsu that made a screeching noise. It wasn't just the noise that made it seem dangerous, but the amount of power oozing from it as well. Once his jutsu was formed, Naruto held it carefully and searched for a target. On his left, there were a couple of trees bundled together. Without any thought running through his head, Naruto took a single step towards the trees and then another before hurling the powerful jutsu towards the trees. The blonde spun in air at blinding speed as he marched towards the trees, wind blowing along its direction. It didn't take long for the jutsu to hit the trees. Once the jutsu collided with the trees, it exploded into a powerful explosion that created a large dome of powerful wind gusts that tore through the trees caught within the explosion. The trees caught within were shredded into pieces by the rotating blades. Naruto didn't need to cover himself from the gusts of wind along with the debris that was flying all over. The blonde Uzumaki created a clone before jumping away from the Kage Bunshin. While still in air, Naruto twisted around to face the clone. He held out his right hand with his eyes firmly on the clone. A Rasengan began to form on the palm of his hand, but it wasn't the normal jutsu. This one was massive in size, and yet Naruto still held it gracefully as gravity pulled him down. The moment both his feet touched the ground, he once again took off like a bullet, lunging toward the clone his eyes were carefully watching. When Naruto reached the clone, he attempted to slam the massive Rasengan into the clone, but it did a quick jump to avoid him, and Naruto slammed the jutsu onto the ground, causing a large explosion that tore through the ground, creating a large crater. While still in midair, the clone held a hand seal, facing Naruto. Futon, Shinkajoku. The clone exhaled several air bullet-like wind chakra towards Naruto in high speed. The jutsu was traveling at such a speed that it would make it almost impossible for one to dodge them all. Seeing the incoming attack, Naruto was quick respond. His speed may have increased because senjutsu, but the clone was still using the same chakra as him. A mistake could see him with a couple of holes in his body. The blonde held out his right hand. Sage Art, Wind Reflector. Naruto exhaled dense wind chakra from his mouth. The wind quickly took the form of large shield in front of him. It formed within seconds, and was partly visible even to the naked eye because it wasn't pure wind but wind chakra. When the jutsu released by the clone collided with his shield, the jutsu bounced back to the clone, double the speed. Taking into the account that the original jutsu was already difficult to dodge without being hit, a reflection of it with double the speed made it impossible for the clone to dodge. It hadn't even seen anything when the bullets drilled through its body before it turned into a puff of smoke. Sensing chakra movement, Naruto twisted around to see what was attacking him. He didn't have a problem with the people attacking him at this moment because he could use someone who could be the object to take out his frustrations. A large black and white tiger was in midair, lunging towards him with its teeth bared and paws ready to slash across his face. Naruto's mask didn't change as he raised his right hand toward the tiger. He waited until it got closer. When it was just inches away from his hand, he flicked his index finger, muttering a few words. The tiger exploded into blank ink a second later. Naruto raised an eyebrow when the ink started falling on him. It started spreading as if it were alive. It was then that he recognized a formula within the ink. He might not be a sealing master, but he had enough experience with seals to recognize a sealing technique when he saw it. The blonde looked up when Danzo flashed into view along with his agents, Sai along with him. "Are you sure the seals will hold, Sai?" Danzo asked calmly as he watched the still Naruto. "Yes, it should seal off the Kyuubi's chakra as well as his chakra." "Good," Danzo said, but didn't say a word to Naruto as he removed the bandages around his forehead, revealing a Sharingan on his right eye. "Uzumaki Naruto, you shall become my weapon from today, henceforth." Chapter 3. Naruto didn't have any experiences with Danzo, but Jiraiya had warned him when he was telling him about the dark side of Konoha. The Sannin hadn't been wrong to warn him of the Warhawk. Sai had been brought into Team 7 in order to spy on him, and now that the teen has done so and brought some valuable information, the man was trying to make him his weapon. It was ridiculous. He had much to achieve in this world to be turned into a mere weapon of Danzo. The man was up to no good and Naruto wasn't going to allow himself to be used like that. He had his dreams and this man would not stand in the way, no matter what. "Naruto, if you're not going to kill him, we need to get out of here. I'm getting a bad vibe about this." He could never mistake the Sharingan's intent to cast genjutsu on him. He had been in the same situation not once but twice and he would not be manipulated by those cursed eyes the third time. He was even willing to pump chakra worth 6 taels for Naruto's usage just for him to wreck Danzo. He would not forgive those cursed eyes, or as Madara put it simply, blessed eyes. If Naruto was controlled, he would also fall in the same shoes. This time around, he was going to avoid it because this time around, he could do something about it. "I'm getting that feeling as well," Naruto responded calmly. He had trained hard enough to sense malicious feeling. Besides, some battles were not determined by firepower alone, but some surprises could tip the scales. Naruto may perhaps have the most explosive firepower than anyone in the Hidden Leaf because of his hosting of the Kyuubi, but that didn't make him the most powerful shinobi. He was miles off from being the most powerful, and even those not Jinchurikis could still make fun of him in battle. Experience counted. He didn't have much of it, but he would still have to do more hazardous training to obtain a level of power that would it practical for him to step into the shadows. Naruto turned his focus on the old man. "Who could have thought that you had the Sharingan in any case? I don't know much, but I will not become your weapon." He held out his right hand, summoning a long silver sword. The blonde blurred out of sight within a blink of an eye. His movements had been both shocking and fast because they hadn't expected him to be able to move with Sai's seal activated, and the speed hadn't been anything they were expecting. Naruto appeared in front of Danzo, his sword speeding through the air, heading straight towards the Sharingan the man had exposed. The War Hawk's expression did not change, but he was sweating in the inside because that wasn't something that he could dodge if he allowed it to hit him. No, it wasn't that he would have allowed it, there was just nothing he could do. The movement had just been ridiculously fast that even though he still had the Sharingan to predict movements, he couldn't move his body. At least he believed that his precious agents would come to his rescue. They would use their bodies to protect him. He was their master and the one with the plans after all. Because of this belief, Danzo didn't waver, not even for a second, even though he was sweating. And the agent flashed between Naruto and Danzo, his back facing the blonde. Naruto's sword was headed straight towards the back of his head. Within a second, the sword cut through his head as if it was piercing, cutting through flesh. The sword cut in the blink of any eye, and a second later, the top half of the man's head rolled over to the side. Naruto didn't look too much into the blood that followed shortly. He wanted to move towards Danzo but halted for a moment as he sensed the other agents making moves towards him. Within a second, the agents that were around Danzo had surrounded the blonde. This wasn't that tricky because of his Sage mode. He could trample upon a couple of the agents without any troubles. His halting was simply because he had no desire to bring about a slaughter at this moment. There was no need to rehearse the bloody scenes he was going to leave on his trail once he decides to leave the village. He needed time to settle things and not rush into things. Why not go through it? You're still not familiar with the smell of blood, and this will be good to test your resolve. The Hidden Leaf's reaction to a massacre would certainly be interesting. Naruto ignored the Kyuubi and brought his sword from the sides. He didn't look at the blood dripping, but it wasn't because he didn't care, just that he didn't want to look. It was surprising that none of these people seemed to care about the loss of their comrade. Was this how things went normally? A person just died and no one had reacted to it. By their looks, they didn't seem to care. The old rule that the mission comes first before saving comrades. His sentimental sensei had moved him away from such a thought, even though following the rules of shinobi was important. It had taught him a lot, but he was going to abandon those comrades. It would be no different than what he was doing. How are you able to move? Danzo asked calmly. His dead agent didn't bother him. He was just another weapon that had served its purpose. He was alive because of the tool. It should have died with a smile knowing that it had done something good in its life. Because I'm not using my chakra or the Kyuubi's chakra. Who told you that such a worthless piece of seal could hold me back? Naruto asked. You seem to be under the impression that I did not sense your intent long ago. Sai should have told you in his report that I am able to sense the emotions, but I guess you have not been told. Don't you think that if I sensed your intent I wouldn't do anything to protect myself? Sai frowned in the inside because he knew that the blonde was stating a fact. An important fact that he didn't disclose to Danzo. He should have known better when the blonde didn't do anything when he attacked. They were attacking now, so naturally, he would fight back. Danzo narrowed his eyes, but the blonde still didn't frighten him. Without the use of the Kyuubi's chakra, there was no way that he could escape this situation. He was confident of this. Still, the main idea wasn't to win a fight here. There was something much more sinister. You don't seem to be in a position to do anything, Danzo stated calmly. That is what you think, Naruto said. The moment he said those words, two clones, in Sage mode, crash landed on the sides. It was a crash land because when they slammed into the ground, and it was shattered with a small amount of debris flying around their feet as they straightened up. A second lapse of concentration from one of the agents when one of the clones made a movement towards Danzo. Naruto twisted around in a flash. His speed enhanced by Senjutsu was truly frightening, but still not the yellow flash. Even so, he could not be compared to normal means of speed in this mode. As he twisted, Naruto lifted his sword, weaving it through the air horizontally. The sword traveled in blinding speed that didn't even slow down when it cut through the neck of the in its path. The man didn't even notice anything before his head started falling down the ground. Naruto jumped away from the still holding his sword firmly. It was already 2 down, but was he going to have a go at this? This man wanted something from him, and he was hiding something sinister behind those bandages. It was something, wasn't it? He had just returned and already another human was planning to do something to him. The desire was certainly not to kill him, but something else. Was it manipulation? It could be, especially with such a man standing before him. Kurama had said something interesting about the Hidden Leaf's reaction if he ended up killing everyone here. Perhaps Tsunade would back him, but he did not know much about how the others thought of him. But if it was the Danzo squad, they would certainly fight for him to face some sort of punishment. Well, Tsunade would have the final say in everything. Whilst the blonde was still lost in his thoughts, the Foundation Umbu surrounded him once more once his clones dispersed, having served their purpose of distraction. Naruto cleared his thoughts and turned his attention on his surroundings. People who did not have good intentions towards him surrounded him. The motive may not be to kill him, but it was certainly not going to be good for him, and it didn't mean they would not break a couple of his bones if he resisted the charge. It was already 2 down, and he had taken them down so easily. Of course, there was still a fight he had to fight. This was just the beginning. Although he had already taken 2 down, the others didn't appear to be unnerved by this. Their body language spelled indifference. Naruto put away his blade and faced one of the agents but spoke to Danzo. "What are you really after, Danzo? You say weapon, but there seems to be another hidden agenda," the blonde asked in a calm tone, barely audible. There was no anger in his tone, just curiosity. "I heard you tried to turn me into a weapon when I was still younger, but I don't think I have ever done anything then again. I did nothing to the hidden leaf to warrant their hatred towards me." A sad story that was, but it was all in the past. He could not forget it, but it was something that he could not go about thinking too deeply about. "Fishing for information?" Danzo said with narrowed eyes. "Are you giving up the fight?" Naruto shook his head twice. A somewhat sad and bitter mask slipped into his face as he did so. The blonde closed his eyes for a moment before holding out both his hands. When his eyes opened, they were sharp and appeared to have a raging storm behind them. His enemies sensed chakra and moved quickly. 2 jumped away along with Danzo and 2 more cut the distance between them and him. It was just a single step that took them on his left and right sides. Their swords cutting through the air in blinding speed, aimed at both his shoulders. Naruto could see the attacks coming from a distance. He enjoyed the benefits of senjutsu in such situations because his senses were truly heightened. Perhaps this was what one could call the ultimate fighting mode. Yes, this mode could cause much destruction on the landscape, especially when used by someone with an obsession for destruction. Before the swords could cut him, Naruto's hands moved quickly, each heading towards the incoming strikes. He did something that surprised the emotionless robots. He caught both swords. There was not even a drip of blood from the palm of his hands. He followed this by snapping the swords, forcing the Umbu to jump away to regroup. Naruto blurred away towards his right. Before the Umbu could even land on the ground, Naruto was already upon him. The blonde drove his right punch towards the man's head. The Umbu folded both his hands just above his head in an effort to block the punch. Even though he had been taught pain, he could not help but to bite his teeth when Naruto's punch crashed into his defense. If anything, it felt as if a hammer had slammed onto him. The punch carried a brutal force that propelled his body backwards uncontrollably, and he ended up slamming into a tree's trunk with his back. Another operative flashed behind Naruto. He had a right foot swinging dangerously towards the back of the blonde's head. Naruto saw it coming and ducked under, dropping down the ground on his knees before facing up. "Katan, Great Fireball no Jutsu." The blonde released intense flames from his mouth. The flames were supplemented by the power of the Kyubi to make them much more powerful than a normal fireball. The jutsu flew towards Zina, but the man quickly did a replacement jutsu, replacing himself with a log. The flames consumed the log entirely, leaving only ashes. Naruto stood up slowly. He wasn't sensing any attacks coming his way. He turned around to face his enemies. They were all surrounding Danzo. The blonde became curious looking at them. The war hawk had the right side of his face bandaged, hiding the Sharingan. His curiosity grew deeper when Nana suddenly disappeared without a trace. When he tried following their chakra, he sensed powerful chakra signatures coming this way. He could not tell if it were Tsunade's Umbu or more of Danzo's forces. Either way, he did not have much time to think about it as Danzo suddenly burst toward him. Although he appeared to be a cripple, he moved rather well. Even so, Naruto still caught the man by his throat the moment he reached him. The blonde lifted the man with his hold, making it difficult for him to breathe. "Something is very wrong in this picture," Naruto said in a dangerously low tone. Yes, he could not deny that there was an uncomfortable feeling creeping through his spine. Before the man could say anything, more guests arrived at the scene. "Uzumaki Naruto, what are you doing?" a powerful voice demanded. Naruto dropped Danzo and looked at the trees, Konoha's Umbu. Was this Danzo's angle? There were 2 bodies lying beside him, dead by his hand. Had this man set him up? Even so, Tsunade wouldn't believe this come over him, would she? No, she would not. Then why go this far? "We asked you a question, Uzumaki?" Yes, Danzo was a corrupt old geezer, but those were just his thoughts. In the eyes of many, Danzo was a respectable elder of the Hidden Leaf. It would certainly paint a crippling image about him if it was said that he attacked the man. But that couldn't be Danzo's angle, could it? What would he gain by doing something like that? Naruto looked down at Danzo with narrowed eyes instead of answering the question. "Was this your plan?" Danzo acted as if he didn't hear anything and got up from the ground. "My bodyguards are dead, he killed them. I don't know for what reason, but he also wanted to kill me," the war hawk stated with a straight face. He walked over to Naruto before he whispered, Tsunade may back you, but there will always be a doubt regarding your actions the moment it's something that sounds bad. You're the Jinchuriki of the Bijou that nearly destroyed the hidden leaf. That shadow will always hover over you," the man said before turning to address the Umbu. "Take him away." The Umbu didn't act immediately. The reason was simple: Danzo had no authority to order them around. They followed the orders of their commander and the Hokage. This man was an elder, but he had no authority to order them. If it was Shikaku, it would be a different story. They nevertheless had to take Naruto away. Protocol was protocol. Strictly speaking, they had to give Danzo the benefit of the doubt. Of course, they weren't taking Danzo's word as it was. They were Umbu, they would get to their own conclusions. Protocol, however, required that they take the blonde away. There would not be a need, but since he was treated as a flight risk, he needed to take him away. "Uzumaki Naruto, you will come with us," the Umbu said as they walked towards the blonde Jinchuriki. "You will have to come with us to the Hokage Tower, Danzo-sama." Danzo was still an elder, so unless the Hokage gave a clear order, they could not do anything to him. Neither Danzo nor Naruto resisted. However, as Naruto was taken to Umbu cells, Danzo was taken to see Tsunade. It took just disappearing from the forest of death to Naruto appearing in front of cell. They didn't waste time in sealing his chakra. Naruto still did not resist when they sealed his chakra with seals designed for a Jinchuriki. He was put in a lock cell before they disappeared away. Naruto looked around the gloomy cell for a moment before shaking his head. He walked over to the wall facing him and settled down in a meditative posture with his face facing the bars ahead. "Well, I didn't expect things to end up this way," Kurama said calmly. He wasn't the least concerned that the blonde had his chakra sealed. What surprised him was that from being attacked, they now ended up in a chamber of horrors, for humans at least. Perhaps they wouldn't be in this situation if Naruto had been a little smarter. Nothing would come out of reminding the blonde that except for amusing himself. "Jiraiya did warn me against the man. It is unexpected, but I had been warned that he was dangerous," Naruto responded calmly. "I guess the ball is in Tsunade's hands now." "You think that woman will release you?" Naruto nodded. "She knows me well enough, and if Jiraiya was true, she wouldn't believe anything Danzo says about me." "Do you trust her that much?" Naruto nodded. "Do not be disappointed when she doesn't. You of all people should know humans could never be trusted. When they start thinking twice, they will stab you in the back. We are even in this situation because of humanity's greed and treachery. That man wants my power. I can tell." "I'm not deeply concerned about the treachery," Naruto said with a shrug. "What worries me is how is this going to work for him? If he did his research, he should know that Tsunade would back me up at any day, so why do it? Is he planning something else?" "You'll know soon enough," Kurama said before closing his eyes. Meanwhile, Hokage's office. Tsunade had a murderous glare on her face as she stared at Danzo. The Umbu had told her what they had seen and what the elder had said to them. Naruto hadn't responded to their question, nor had he denied anything when Danzo said he was attacked. The Godane dismissed the Umbu. She really wished that Jiraiya was present in the village, but her former teammate had left, and if she doesn't send him a message, he wasn't likely to come back soon. He needed to be back in the village for Naruto's sake. This was a bad thing for Naruto, especially with his history. She hadn't thought that Danzo would make a move on Naruto in this fashion though. She had hoped that nothing bad would happen, but who was she kidding? Nothing ever went according to plan in this world. Things were always moving in another way, nothing ever going according to plan. At the moment, she just wanted to pummel the man down the ground and perhaps send him over to the other world. He was a relic of the past that shouldn't be living at this time and age. Yet, Tsunade had to hold her rage down before doing something reckless. If she did so, it would only add fuel into the fire, and that would definitely go back to haunt Naruto. Why couldn't you just leave Naruto alone? He just returned and the villagers were not looking at him in the same way as they did before he left. Tsunade was remarkably calm. Why couldn't I leave him alone? What are you talking about, Tsunade? Your Jinchuriki attacked me when I went to greet him. He killed 2 of my men, and had it not been for the Umbu showing up, he would have killed me as well. Tsunade snapped. Her fist slammed onto her desk, nearly shattering it. Her killing intent rose dramatically, yet Danzo remained unnerved. Enough with your nonsense, Danzo, she shouted angrily. Umbu, get me Inoichi. It took about 2 minutes for Inoichi to be brought before the Godane. The Yamanaka didn't get to even say the first words as the Godane went on with the order the moment he appeared. Danzo has accused Naruto of trying to kill him. Take him away and prove what he is saying. Just to make sure that nothing gets out of hand, I want the village secured. Inoichi looked surprised with the command he was being given. To him, it was the same as being given the order to search the minds of his fellow clan hands. I'm fine with it, Danzo said as calmly. The moment the Warhawk said those words, Tsunade's anger disappeared. Had she been stupid and blind, she would not notice that something was very wrong in the picture. The fact that Danzo was willing to allow Inoichi to get into his head was seriously troubling. It spelled danger, and for a moment she thought of allowing the man to walk free, but her curiosity got the best of her. "Take him away, Inoichi. I want a response as soon as possible," Tsunade said. "Hi, Hokage-sama." Inoichi managed some resolve before accompanying Danzo to the torture and intel division. Once they were gone, Tsunade settled in tense silence, trying to understand the situation. If Danzo was going willingly, there was no option of his root trying something funny. Even so, this was a serious problem in itself. She really needed Jiraiya in case something bad happens. What if Inoichi finds information that incriminates Naruto? Would she willingly disregard that and execute Danzo instead? In any case, she just needed to ensure that this stayed a secret that would only be known to Umbu. Yes, an S-rank secret that would protect Naruto against anything Danzo might have planned. She could just order Inoichi to seal the report and free both Danzo and Naruto. Later, Umbu cells. Naruto's eyes opened slightly as he sensed a presence before the cell. The infamous Ibiki was standing before his cell. He could remember the man from the chunin exams, but aside from that, the man was known for his torturing skills. Fearsome skills, he could say. Pain wasn't something that Naruto feared. He had experienced enough of it. Bodily harm was nothing, emotional pain was the one had to fear. Even so, Naruto didn't think that things would go that far. "If it isn't the gutful brat from the chunin exams," Ibiki said with a smile. "You have certainly changed, and I never thought I'd end up seeing someone like you here." Naruto looked at the moment for a moment before responding. "This is a place for criminals and the rogue shinobi you catch along the streets of the Leaf trying to poke their noses on things they shouldn't. I've been a better person. So, I can say even I didn't think I'd end up in this place. But you cannot predict anything in this world." Ibiki nodded. He unlocked the cell and commanded the blonde to come out. "Then I hope you will be cooperative. I'd hate to take extreme measures against Leaf shinobi." Naruto eyed the man for a second as they walled through dark passages heading towards an interrogation room. "I doubt you'd go that far." Something that was left unsaid made Ibiki curious. "Oh? Why do you think so?" "A couple of scenarios," Naruto responded without giving a definite answer. Kurama would definitely not allow something like that to happen. The seals that were suppressing his chakra were likely to be shattered and the bijou would go on a rampage. Perhaps just to force him to move out of the hidden leaf. It wasn't that Naruto hasn't noted that the bijou was being pushy regarding him leaving Konoha in pursuit of dreams. Naruto wasn't in a hurry to leave, he had the time to do what he wanted. He could even still try to enjoy his youth anyway. But that wasn't something he would do. If he tried that, he would end up living just normal and the dream would remain as it is, a dream. That was something else though. For now, there was this situation that he was facing. He had taken much time to think about it, and it didn't appear as if things were going to turn out perfectly for him. He hasn't even seen Tsunade before him, the woman has not said anything nor has she bothered appearing before him. Not for a moment did he think she just didn't know. He wasn't that naive. Well, at least he was going to be questioned. Perhaps he would get to find out more about Danzo's angle in all these. The man had said he was going to make him his weapon, but that was something he hadn't been able to fully understand because he could not solve the how in the equation. "I hope those aren't the responses you will be giving me," Ibiki said as he opened the door to the interrogation room. Naruto entered quietly and sat himself on a small chair. Ibiki faced him with an expressionless mask on his face and a dose of killing intent for measure. For a moment, Naruto felt amused. Was this supposed to make him fearful of the man? "Does something amuse you?" Ibiki asked in a hardened tone. He didn't like it when his subjects had that look before him. Then again, they only wore it now, but when things got tough, they would be screaming and pissing on themselves while spilling the beans. "No offense, but you people were frightening back then," Naruto said with a shake of his head. "Your killing intent, it does nothing." The man raised his intent to levels that would have made even a low join uncomfortable, yet Naruto didn't even twitch. Even if you raise it to its limits, it's not going to change anything. You're still just a human. I have been exposed to murderous intents of the bijou I host. Well, I don't need to tell you how frightening it is considering that you were very much active back then. Mentioning the Kyuubi was no means an attempt to make the man uncomfortable. The bijou was likely even to raise suspicions about him and his connection with the bijou. People would certainly become nervous if they knew he spoke to the bijou quite often. Nevertheless, Naruto wasn't going to keep from mentioning the bijou because some people couldn't accept it. Ibiki had his eyes narrowed as he responded. "That is a night that not one is fond of. There were many people who died on that day. It was night that changed my fate because I was used as a sacrifice to contain the bijou. I became a substitute to the villagers," Naruto said before shaking his head. "I'm ready when you are, Ibiki-san," Naruto said with a small smile. Ibiki nodded. They ought to begin with the interrogation. Talking about things that didn't matter in this case would not solve anything. Naruto was brought here for a reason. The Godame Hokage had brought him here to conduct an investigation without knowing much what was happening with Danzo. He wasn't to know anything but just try to find out what happened by speaking with Naruto and draw a conclusion. I'm only going to ask you a couple of questions and I would appreciate it if you tell me the truth. The moment I realize you are lying to me, I will use other methods. Do you understand what I mean by that? Naruto nodded. Torture, he said. Good, Ibiki said with a smile. Now, tell me what happened. Start from the beginning. Naruto appeared thoughtful for a moment before responding. I was home before being summoned to the Hokage office. The Godame wanted to ask a couple of personal questions regarding my well-being. We talked and before I left, I told her that I was going to the Forest of Death to release my thoughts. I had informed her that it would be noisy. As I was busy with my training, Danzo appeared with a couple of more shinobi, along with my new teammate Sai. The teammate attempted to bind me with a seal but I was using senjutsu, so I broke through those seals. Before that, Danzo stated that he wanted to make me his weapon. I don't know what happened, but I attacked. Killed 2 with my sword but then the others disappeared without a trace, leaving me with just Danzo. He charged and I grabbed him by the throat. That was when the Umbu appeared. Did he just leave out the part about Danzo's Sharingan? Naruto was surprised at how he was able to leave that out without blinking an eye. Ibiki took a couple of notes before staring at the blonde deeply. Make you his weapon? What do you think he meant by that? I don't know. I tried asking but he didn't respond to the question. But considering that he attempted to seal my chakra, I can only guess that it involved trying to brainwash me. Naruto said he didn't seem to believe the brainwash part, a fact that Ibiki didn't miss. Are you aware that he did try to get you to be trained by him when you were younger so that you could become the perfect weapon for the Hidden Leaf? Jiraiya did warn me about him, so I wouldn't find it hard to believe. The power of the Kyuubi is something attracting to people who are obsessed with power. They would not waste time doing anything to get their hands on it. Naruto said, a bit indifferently. Ibiki took note of the indifference before asking his next question. Who was the first to attack? From what you said, it doesn't appear as if even though they had attempted to seal your chakra, they attacked first. I surprised them by attacking first when it became obvious to me what they meant. No good intentions. Naruto said calmly. At that point, not attacking when the opportunity had presented itself would have been a mistake on my part, and I may have regretted it. Ibiki stared. Is there anything you're leaving out? Naruto shook his head. I think that's about it, he said. He knew that they would not try to get into his head. Entering the head of Jinchuriki with the Yamanaka techniques was a dangerous risk. If he was a corpse then, it would be fine, but he was still kicking at the bijou within could interfere with the process. I see, the man said before closing his notes. He stood up and told Naruto to do the same. However, he allowed the blonde to walk ahead of him just to avoid any nasty surprises. He was aware that the blonde wasn't restricted in his movements, so taijutsu or using a knife to attack him was very much possible. As they walked within the dark passages, Ibiki asked out of curiosity. From what I know, your relationship with the Godame Hokage is almost like that of family. Why didn't you ask about her, or what she thinks about this? Naruto shrugged. At this stage, it is her duty as the leader of this village that must come first. Personal feelings aside, the blonde said. What, does she have a message for me? Yes, Ibiki said with a nod. She said you must hold on as she tries to conduct things professionally. Most prisoners are usually bound so that they can't even move, but you have your full mobility. Well, there hasn't been any need since you didn't even fight when the Umbu brought you here. I hope you will continue to behave. Naruto smiled. I have manners, he said. Ibiki returned the smile. Yes, says the brat who used to paint the Hokage monument, he said before locking the blonde once more. Once Ibiki was gone, Naruto settled into a meditative pose once more. You mentioned some things you shouldn't have mentioned, Kurama was quick to say the moment the blonde closed his eyes. I know, but I want to see how Tsunade will respond to it. Ibiki surely took notice of it. At this point, I just want to see how people react to this kind of things, Naruto responded calmly. For now, I will just have to wait and see what will happen. Foundation basis. Danzo could not be more satisfied than he was at his grand scheme. Everything had fell into place so smoothly he almost felt like giving himself a pat on the back for a job well done. Of course, he just remained expressionless in the face of a good worked plan bearing him much fruit. Tsunade wasn't much of a problem, at least now when he had all the cards in his hands. Yes, things have never looked so pleasant since the Sandaime Hokage came into power, denying him of his rightful place at the Hokage Tower. That mantle was his and he would not go away from this world without sitting on it. Naruto was the key around this time. The blonde had proved to be powerful. It pleased him massively. He had been a disappointment and a failure for a Jinchuriki before he left the village, but now he was proving his worth. Of course, that made him pleasing to the Warhawk. If he could get his hands on the Jinchuriki and paint him black, things would work out well for him. there would be no one to stand in his way with the power of the most powerful bijou. Tsunade wouldn't do anything, especially with the way he set up things. Any public action against him would result in a massive outrage from the villagers. They loved her, but they also resented the QB and by extension, Naruto. If his message strikes the hearts in the way he wants it, they would surely not accept it if he gets punished whilst the demon gets away with killing 2 innocent members of his unit. When Sai appeared before him, Danzo gave his instructions. You should stay away from the light, for now at least. Naruto is going to tell them everything and they will believe him without getting into his head. I believe that they would not carelessly enter his head knowing that he is a Jinchuriki. In any case, until things settle down and Naruto joins the dark side of things, you will no longer involve yourself in Team 7, Danzo stated calmly. I do, however, have a mission for you. Sai merely waited patiently. He would move when the man before him commanded. He was but a tool after all. With how things were now, he doubted there was even going to be a Team 7. Sasuke didn't look like he was going to come back, and with things their way they were, Naruto could not live within the light freely. He would have to be somewhere he could not be seen by the villagers, such as in Umbu. I cannot allow Orochimaru to take Sasuke's body. He hasn't been forthcoming about the Uchiha's growth, but I have been hearing some things. You are to go to a location. You will be given to meet with someone from Orochimaru for an exchange of information. Once that is done, send the message back and try to locate Sasuke. Don't go in, locate him, observe and then return. Hi, Danzo-sama. What was left now was what? Yes, Jiraiya was going to come up with something and no doubt Tsunade wouldn't let this go. She might not do anything now, but she will try to do something. He had to find a way to go around that. But before that, he needed to make sure that the QB was firmly in his control. Perhaps using Shursei's eyes now was even better. If he had used it back then, there would have been a lot of questions about the change in the blonde's decisions and associations, but with everything around him crumbling, things could work out for him. Thinking of the Sharingan, it was something that the blonde hadn't mentioned it to Ibiki, was it? If he had suggested so, Tsunade would have had her Umbu try to remove the bandages on his head. Of course, if things had come to that, they wouldn't have found anything because he had accounted for that in his planning. Well, it didn't matter anyway. This just meant that the Uzumaki wasn't hopelessly foolish. Hokage office. It was already late at night, but Tsunade was still sitting in her office trying to make sense of everything that has happened today. Inoichi had already brought his report and told her of Naruto just attacking Danzo. Of course, the man had other memories sealed. Inoichi probably saw what Danzo wanted him to see. It was disappointing and she could not draw out a conclusion concerning that report. Even Inoichi could not even draw a conclusion because the memories were blurred, and try as he may, he couldn't get anywhere. She was forced to let Danzo go. Of course, her opinion was that Danzo had attacked Naruto. Whatever this was, Danzo had planned it all. There was no doubt regarding it. But what was she going to do with the man? She was still undecided on that, but what had made her day stressful was a rumor that started to fly about what had happened with exaggerations. Yes, small corners were saying that Naruto had gone on a rampage and killed an unknown number of Umbu, and nearly killed the elderly Danzo before he was apprehended by other Umbu. His absence from the streets, which he had been roaming over the past days because of his jobs, was because he was locked deep in Umbu cells. Tsunade hadn't been thrilled when her Umbu told her of those rumors. Hamura hadn't even made things easier by admitting it to be true to other corners, at least the part where Naruto attacked Danzo and killed his guards. The entire village didn't know about it, but by tomorrow night, everyone would be talking about. Of course, she blamed Danzo for this. It was his plan to try to get Naruto mistrusted once more. She couldn't even release him because of it. If the entire village started talking about it, it would become a problem. Naruto wasn't just an average shinobi. He was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. For years, the villagers had hated him and cursed his existence. There were still some who looked at him with doubt, but some had warmed up to him, especially with his showing at the chunin exams. Even so, this rumor could snap everything back to where it was. Naruto was being controlled by the Kyuubi and was a threat. She certainly hoped that things wouldn't go to that point, but who was she kidding? The thought of the Kyuubi made the villagers of this village turn off their humanity and become intolerable animals she could not stand. Still, Tsunade truly hoped that things didn't revert to back where they were. It would drive Naruto to a corner. They may not do anything to him, but the stares and looks of mistrust, Naruto would only be reliving the days of old. She didn't want that for Naruto. Not when she was leading the village. Could it be that Danzo had planned this? If Naruto was hated and forced to walk in the shadows just so he could escape the villagers, or perhaps he goes to a point where he becomes mentally unstable? If so, it was well played by the Warhawk. He could move in if Naruto allows the hatred to get the better of him. The increasing pressure on him would only make it possible for shouts for Naruto to be controlled and monitored because of the increased risk of his escape from Konoha. The Godame Hokage looked up to the door when she heard a knock. Ibiki walked into the office holding a file marked for the Hokage's eyes only. You took your time, she said bit impatiently. Forgive me, Hokage-sama, but I was trying to connect a few dots and study my time with Naruto before writing down the report of my interrogation, Ibiki said before placing the file on Tsunade's desk. The slug princess stared at it for a moment before looking back at Ibiki. She didn't touch the report. Start with the bad news, Tsunade ordered. There isn't much, but he doesn't appear to be fond of the treatment he received from the villagers back then. He briefly touched on it, and I could see that it wasn't something that made him happy. I could not detect anger towards the villagers. What stuck out the most was when he spoke about killing the 2 root umbu. He didn't blink, but just said I killed the 2 as if he was talking about the weather. There was nothing in his eyes. From what I know, he isn't experienced in killing people. His lack of emotion to death makes me question his mental status. The good news is that what he told me wasn't lie. From my eyes of experience, I can say without doubt that his story is true, according to him at least, Ibiki said in a calm tone. He was cooperative, and showed no signs of aggression. I believe him when he says that Danzo made the first move and said something about making him his weapon. Considering that it wouldn't be the first time he has made those intentions known, I don't find it hard to believe. That was at least some good news from a professional. Perhaps Naruto's testimony would fill in the blanks left out by Danzo. In any case, this was what she had expected. She had known that Naruto wasn't guilty of trying to kill Danzo. Thank you, Ibiki. I will study your report and Inoichi's report before making a decision. I don't have to tell you that the contents of this report are not to be shared with anyone. I understand, Hokage-sama, Ibiki said with a bow. Good, you're excused. Ibiki turned away, but he suddenly stopped and spoke. Hokage-sama, this isn't in the report, but there is something that Naruto left out about Danzo. I can't tell what, but there is something that he did not say. I thought if you spoke to him, perhaps he would tell you. Tsunade nodded and thanked the man once more. The slug princess didn't have the appetite to look into the report at the moment. What he had just said about Naruto, the bad, worried her. How could her Naruto, that naive little boy, kill without even blinking? Ibiki had said so. He hadn't displayed any emotion when he spoke about killing 2 of Danzo's root umbu. In any case, there hadn't been any need to kill them. He could have just disabled them. That has always been the case with him, hasn't it? Beat them until they could no longer stand. Perhaps it was time to fully accept what Jiraiya had said. Naruto was no longer the same. She had been struggling to accept what the pervert had said about Naruto not being the same as he was. The issue Ibiki had raised was a little extreme, so much more that she was worried about his mental state. For a Jinchuriki turning into a heartless killing machine, that was not wanted. It would raise fears. He certainly wouldn't become like Gaara, would he? Tsunade shook her head. Naruto wasn't like that. There had to be a reason. She nodded and looked at Ibiki's report. She went through it speedily, and was pleased when she finished reading it. There was nothing to worry about. She could consolidate the report into one, but now she had to worry about to handle that snake. Yes, she wasn't above using old information to throw him into a cell. However, knowing that Danzo would not willingly settle down, she had to plot wisely to ensure that his cronies were handled. That would be a long process that would involve dark arts, but she wasn't above taking such measures, especially when it dealt with that deceitful snake. Once Jiraiya was back, she would begin with the plotting. She should have done this long ago. Even her sensei should have done so. Midnight umbu cells. You just step away from the village, and when you come back, it is already on its feet. What was just wrong with this village and the plotters? Kakashi had been shocked just learning that Naruto was in umbu cells. He had thought someone was pulling a fast one on him, but it turned out to be true. Even when he was tired from his mission, he could not settle without seeing the blonde. He had asked for permission to be allowed to see the blonde, and they'd allowed him. The Jonin stopped by the dark cell and looked towards the son of the Yondaime Hokage. What has this village done? Would his sensei ever rest in peace? This village resented and ignored the presence of his son, the son he wanted to be seen as a hero, and now it had locked him in a dark cell that was preserved for criminals. Naruto wasn't a criminal. Sure, he has changed, but he didn't deserve to be in this place. Naruto, Kakashi called, just to see if the blonde was asleep or not. He was in that meditative position, but his eyes were closed, and he hadn't reacted to his presence. The blonde's eyes slowly opened. They were just crystal blue, staring back at him. The Jonin did his weak eye smile. He attempted to lighten the mood. It didn't work. Kakashi-sensei, what brings you here in the middle of the night? If I was someone else, I'd think you were here to break me out, Naruto said calmly. Well, that would be something interesting. It would change a whole lot of stories that needed to be written. I just got back, Kakashi said. Are you trying to make a joke regarding that? He asked. Well, Naruto had been mischievous and never wanted to stay still. Perhaps he could think of trying to escape from the cell and go to sleep in his apartment just because he could not sleep peacefully here. He had been that kind of person. But this Naruto knew that there would be consequences if he did such a thing. Who knows? Naruto said. He wasn't surprised to see the Jonin here. The man may have been a crappy sensei who only taught teamwork and tree walking as well as water walking, but he was someone who was human. The Jonin had taught him valuable lessons about life. And he has always looked to be someone filled with regrets, perhaps about his past teammates who were now dead. I thought you'd be sleeping, but I'm happy I'm able to talk to you, Kakashi said. This time his eye smile wasn't weak. I can't sleep at this place. I tried, but it seems impossible. And there had been a visitor not long ago, Naruto said calmly. It had been rather displeasing when one of Danzo's cronies operating in the village's Umbu confronted him. There had been a message for him, and that was that Danzo could get him anywhere, and at any time. That wasn't true and didn't frighten him at all. He was here because he had allowed it. If he had refused, there was nothing those Umbu could have done about it. They could have tried to fight him, but if he pulled most of his cards, he could have just left them chasing after his clones. The fact that one of Danzo's people had come here to give a message had shown him that the man was after something. He had thought now that he was placed here, the man would try something. Of course, then, he would have to fight, and that was going to attract attention. He may have been accused to attempting to escape if Danzo played his cards right. It had just been a message, which meant that there was another plot running somewhere else, and that made him a little worried. Let me guess, Danzo's people? Kakashi said, knowing why Naruto was here. It didn't take a genius to figure that out. What did they want? They are able to reach me anywhere, Naruto said calmly. Kakashi was silent for a couple of moments before speaking once more. How are you holding up though? Considering everything that has happened, this is unfair to you. Especially with Danzo walking around the village without any charge on his head. The Jonin sounded bitter about it. You're not even questioning anything, Naruto said. I worked with him before, I know his tricks and I know you, Kakashi said a bit carelessly on the last part. Naruto nodded. Considering everything, huh? My life hasn't been easy, it has been disappointments after disappointments. Our time with Team 7 was fine though. Now, it was perhaps the happiest time of my life. Sakura, you, and Sasuke. Of course, with the latter, it ended with betrayal and a stab in the chest that would have killed me if I wasn't a Jinchuriki. Well, that wasn't the first time he had tried it anyway. You stopped it last time. When I returned, everything seemed fine. The villagers seemed to have changed slightly. Of course, there were still some eyes, but for the most part one could walk within the streets and do missions without any burden. Just when you think all is well, boom, Danzo appears and says he wants to turn you into his weapon. Long story short, I end up being here. This is the kind of life that I live, but honestly, Kakashi, I don't know if I'm okay. Right now, I don't want to think too much about my happiness. When I get out of here, I will think about it because then I will know what will await me. It can't get worse than this, right? Kakashi flinched with that last question from Naruto. No one should really say those words because they appeared like a curse. Yes, it was going to get worse than this. Today was nothing, but tomorrow by midday, Naruto would no longer be able to walk in the streets freely. Kakashi had known that it would have to take Naruto about doing something ridiculously pleasing in the eyes of the villagers for them to accept him as just Naruto. There was a big but nevertheless. If Naruto happened to do something that was considered evil, all those fears, those thoughts they had about him, would come back in the blink of an eye. The human mind was a treacherous thing. One simple wrong could ruin a lifetime of good. And for Naruto, a single rumor could return to the days of the old. It wasn't going to become simple as there was apparently someone running a campaign against the blonde, at least as far as his former colleagues at Umbu have told him. Even if there were some exaggerations, but if the villagers recall what they used to call him, the loved ones they lost, the image of the Kyuubi destroying this village, those emotions would show themselves once more. Had it been a couple of years ago, he wouldn't have had the guts to say it to Naruto, but there was no other choice here. He hadn't spoken to the Godame and the Umbu said they hadn't told the blonde about it yet. But Kakashi wasn't going to keep Naruto in the dark about something like this, even if it would be painful for him to accept. There is actually something, Kakashi said, his tone a bit hollow. I haven't witnessed it myself, but the Umbu said after conducting some investigations, they found out that there was a rumor with some exaggerations running around the streets. It was a surprise to them, because only a few knew about the incident as Tsunade-sama had declared it an S-rank secret. Not even the clan heads were told about it. But somehow, it was doing rounds in the streets. Kakashi didn't have to spell it out what was being said, Naruto could make heads and tails. Yes, he had killed people, but they were probably looking at it as if it was some sort of taboo because he was a Jinchuriki of the Bijou that killed many that fateful night. They were exaggerating, but Konoha's people have always acted in such a manner. Naruto didn't find it surprising really. Did he really expect more from them? Maybe, but this was the reality of things. The fact that they had called him a demon brat when he was just a little boy showed him just how treacherous they could be. Naruto sighed disappointedly. These were the humans he wanted to save from the corrupt world of shinobi. What has the world really offered him? Well, it was because the world was in such a state that he could not live peacefully. Yes, he had to fight this world in order to change it. There have been people who say that the world was wrong simply because they wanted to push their agendas, but in this case, Konoha was well and truly wrong, and he wasn't the only one who could attest to that. However, he was the only one who was going to do something about it. The bright color that had been in his eyes dimmed slightly before he responded with just 2 words. I see. I believe that Danzo was after this. If this pushes you into the darkness, it would be much easier for him to get his hands on you. People in pain and starting to doubt life is much easier to corrupt. In Danzo's world, he must think that you will be corruptible. A little push is all that is required. He's probably thinking that he can convince you that you no longer have a life in the light but should operate in the darkness. Kakashi said. He didn't know what was coming over him to say all these. Perhaps it was that he was angered by this scheme from the Warhawk. He is rather good at this kind of tactics, Naruto said. If the rumor expands to the entire village, it is going to take me saving this village from complete destruction for them to see me in good light. The blonde sighed, shaking his head. Thanks for letting me know, Kakashi-sensei. I will think about it more along this sleepless night. Kakashi stared at Naruto for a long minute, trying to figure out what the blonde was thinking, but he could not think of anything. Well, Naruto has always been strong, unlike him. The Jonin shook his head. For a moment, he felt miserable at being unable to do anything. When things had been difficult, Naruto's father had been always with him. A pity, from what he heard, Jiraiya hadn't even told Naruto about his parentage. One of these days he was going to do it, but he figured it would be something that would only hurt the blonde more. Even so, it was still something that needed to be done. There was so much weight on this, Kakashi just felt like sitting by next to the bars, perhaps even doze off. He didn't even have any other story he could share with the blonde. Did it feel like he was abandoning the blonde by leaving him alone here? Sasuke was already gone. He didn't want to lose Naruto too. There had been blunders he made as the sensei of Team 7, but he was man enough to admit that. Of course, it didn't change anything, but he knew, and admitting it wasn't to make himself feel better. Naruto closed his eyes, seeing that Kakashi was having a debate within his head. I see that you have a lot to think about. You should go somewhere you will be able to think clearly, Kakashi-sensei. I also need to do my thinking. Because if I leave this place tomorrow, a whole new world will be awaiting me. I must be prepared to face that. Kakashi slowly nodded. Another weak-eyed smile graced his expression, but he did not move, not until a couple of minutes flew by. Once Kakashi slowly retreated, Naruto opened his eyes. A cursed life, huh? Just a day ago he was agonizing about the fact that he was going to betray his friends, and now he was being taken back to those miserable young days he had experienced in this village. His mind was a lot different now, and it felt as if he could get frustrated. But he knew, if he allowed such an emotion to grab him, he would learn to resent people, like murderously resent them. For the path he was going to take, it would be easy for him to get lost. He could not allow hatred to find a room in his heart. Perhaps he would have some stored away, but he would not allow it to control him. If he allowed such, he would certainly live with the regrets for the rest of his miserable life. It wouldn't be a bad thing if you get lost in that way, Kurama suddenly said. If tomorrow becomes unbearable and the villagers return to their ways, what would be the use of trying to create a better world for these people? No one would blame you if you thought of destruction rather than peace, Tsunade said. But I know you're not going to follow that path. Either way, humans are such despicable creatures. The bigger question though is, are they worth saving? I'm also a human, Naruto responded calmly. Perhaps my methods and the way I will take will let me take the mantle of God, but I will only be playing God. Well, not with the current power I have. I'm strong but not almighty powerful to take on an entire village. Of course, your power makes me ridiculously powerful, but I have yet to master the control of it. Before the journey even begins, I must bury myself into deep training. If you knew that, you shouldn't have even returned to this village. If you even leave now like this, no one will blame you. The villagers will be happy you're gone. You'd love to leave the village when there is a chance of freedom, Naruto said calmly. I will decide when to move. For now, I'm interested in understanding how these people think. Why would I want to save people when I do not even understand them? You execute jutsu flawlessly when you know everything about it and are a master of its element. I must know more and understand more before I start acting like a god, well, at least to myself. To this village, just the demon they knew I was. What if Naruto returns stronger than Jiraiya Chunin exams? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.